All right, let's just do a quick audio test. Make sure you guys can hear me okay. Yay! Okie doke. Okay, so we have a little bit of housekeeping to do just before we get into recapping what happened last week. Um, I've gone over some of Jess's lessons going forward, and unfortunately, her lesson 11 is a duplicate of lesson 10. So originally, I think her lesson 11 was to do file uploads, which is fine. And then in week 12, she has her review. So we actually have a few weeks left. So we have today, we have next week on the 7th. We have the 14th, which is still another lesson. And then your exams or midterms are on the 21st. So this week here that we have through this week. So we still have 2 full lessons. No, hold on, Mitty, 1 second. I bet you it's again that silly, the silly thing. I have to stop sharing to do it. Sorry, Mitty's just noting that he can't talk to anyone. He can only talk privately. Sign privileges. Yeah, you see, it's weird. It goes dash sometimes and then makes it so that you can't. You should be able to now. You should be able to talk now to everybody. I don't know why it does it sometimes. It doesn't do it all the time. What I've noticed is that WebEx is extremely glitchy. There's a lot of problems with WebEx. I'm not a big fan. Anyways, okay, so just like it closes the chat window, so I have no idea if anybody's talking. Open that up. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so week 10 and week 11 are the exact same lesson, which is actually okay, because what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to, my authentication lesson is quite big. It actually spans over 2 classes. And just for example, last night we were doing it, and it was literally, we got to the point where you could insert a user and like you could register a user and that was it. That's all you could do. So we didn't actually get into the rest of the authentication portion of the class. So the same thing's going to happen to you guys. So I'm the way, and plus you actually have a little bit extra to learn tonight than what they did last night, because your lab 4 assumes you guys know how to do Google Recaptcha. That being said, though, I'm kind of tempted on changing lab 4. So in my other group, they don't have lab 4-5. They just have lab 4, but it's counts for lab 4 and 5 because it's a whole authentication lab and it requires you to have everything for authentication in order to get it to work. But we'll stick with what Jess is doing. So we're going to learn a little bit about Google Recaptcha tonight, just a tiny little bit. We're going to implement it. And then after that, we'll start working on our actual application as well for integrating in authentication. We'll see how far we get. And then we'll continue on next week, and then we have the last week as a buffer. So if there's anything left over from the authentication module that we need to cover in the last week, we can. But if there isn't, what we'll do is we'll do file uploads. Okay, so we have that buffer. I don't usually do file uploads. What I usually do instead is I teach relationships. So I teach the relationship between one table and another. You guys hopefully are doing this in your relational database class. Like, for example, you might have an authors table, and each author would have many books. right? So that's a relationship that you create. You have an authors table and a books table, and then you create that relationship. I don't know if you guys do that in your relational database class or have done relationships yet. Have you done relationships? Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So if you've done relationships, usually I teach doing that inside the PHP side of it because, when you insert a record, how do you insert a record that also correlates to this other thing, right? So we kind of show that in PHP. But I mean, file uploading is no, arguably it's not as important. Especially considering that when you get out into the real world, file uploading either A is handled for you through things like WordPress or whatever if you're building in PHP, or you don't do file uploading that way. You generally do it through a party service like Amazon AWS, or you're uploading to Dropbox. So the whole concept changes right then and there. So I don't know. It differs. Anyways, doesn't matter. I digress. So last week we talked about APIs. We went through the whole process of building an API. Some of you have reached out over the week and have actually started to implement that whole concept of working with controllers into your actual phase project. So that's pretty cool. By the way, that's like guaranteed to get a bonus if I come across MongoDB controller systems inside phase projects, especially for first year PHP students. Yeah, it's like guaranteed bonuses. Just keep that in mind. But otherwise, I'm not expecting that at all. Your labs, just so I'm clear, are they always done on code that Jess provides, or are you allowed to apply it to your projects instead? Because I know you did that for lab 3. Okay, so she has code for you to download for this lab, but what I'm going to say is you can actually just take the code and, yeah, exactly, Steph, and just apply it to your projects. That way we're not like, that way we don't have to mark a separate code base. I can just mark your projects. Uh, I can't send messages to everyone. Yulia says, I can't send messages to everyone. That's why it's private. Is there a way you can show us how to implement API to TuneShare app? No. No, that's a big thing. That's a huge, huge thing to do. To actually take TuneShare and then convert it so that it works like an API, that would be a massive undertaking, right? Because you already have it built. So no, unfortunately, I have to decline doing that one. Yeah, we don't have enough class. It would be literally 2 classes just showing that. And that's the thing. The whole API thing, what we learned last week is cool. It's an awesome concept. It's something you should know going into the industry, but we're not going to test it. I'm not expecting it to be in your projects at all, not even a little bit. So it is kind of just like I don't know, I don't want to say a bonus lesson, but it has value. It definitely has value to you. Understanding the concepts of how APIs actually work from the endpoint. That being said, it looks like what Jess was actually intending for you guys to learn last week was just setting up Google Recaptcha, was basically what you guys were supposed to learn. Let me see if I can. I can't seem to turn on your public sharing there, Yulia. I don't know why and it doesn't give me the ability to access information I need to access in order to change that feature. Maybe I can do it if I pull open participants. Let me see if it's an option for you. So I get the option of making you a presenter. I can chat to you. That's it. That's literally the options. There's no, oh, hold on. Assign privileges. There we go. Aha, I found something. Now you should be able to chat with everybody. Do you want to try? Yay! All right, so if it's not working for you, let me know. I just right click on you and choose to assign privileges. Oh, Jesse? All right. It's not supposed to do that. Oh, weird. Actually, Jesse, you don't even have the option to assign privileges. I need to change your role. Weird. I can't even change your role. Yeah, I can't change anything about you. And Ria, let's see. Yep, you, I can change your privileges. There we go. Jesse, if you jump out and then rejoin, it might work. Yeah, no kidding. It's like selectively changing your permission sets. It's kind of obnoxious that it does that. It's also making it so I can't stretch the window like I want to. Did it work for you, Jesse? Maybe I can actually... Yeah, and I still don't have the ability to assign you different privileges. That's super weird. Oh, there's an assign button here. Nope. Yeah, it's so stupid. All right. Anyways, let's get into it because we're gonna run out of time either way. So if you go to code examples, I did provide you starter files. Go ahead and click on those and download those starter files. Once they're down to your computer, go ahead and move them into your live folder. I need all these extra folders here. And it's probably a folder nested in a folder, just to give you a heads up, because that tends to happen in Windows when I go to zip the folders. I can't just select all these, right click and choose send to, because it just sends the one stupid file, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. Make sure you create a new folder for your lesson. I'm going to create a lesson 9 folder here. Just send it out as a tarball. Yeah, I should do that. And then I'm just going to drag these files over and drop them into lesson 9. And there we go. We've got lesson 9 in there. By this point, this isn't really things we should have to explain. You should be able to just move them over, right? Same as like when we want to see this live, we need to open up our servers, right? Our PHP servers. So start up your PHP server. And then we have a couple of SQL things to install today. I'm going to open this code base with code. I'm going to zoom in so you can actually see it. There you go. And then I'm going to navigate to that lesson under localhost. So it should be under your comp dash. I think I stuck it in the wrong directory. I did actually. That's funny. Well, it's not funny to you. It's funny to me. I didn't put it under my Wednesday group. And it's not lesson 9. Let's make that temporary. Try again. Oh, stop Dropbox. Nope, it's actually VS Code. Try it now. Sorry, it's lesson 10, not lesson 9. My other class is actually like 2 lessons behind you guys, which is bizarre. One because of the break. I was sick for 1 week and we kind of covered a lesson that we wound up having to do in class. But yeah, anyways, not your problem. All right, so now I can go to the Wednesday group. So dash Wednesday 02. And lesson 10 is what I'm going to load. And it looks like this. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that pretty? I need my lesson plan, so I'm not completely just winging it. Though at this point I can teach this one kind of blindfolded, but do it properly. All right, so we are looking at authentication. We are going to talk about Google Recaptcha. So during the API lesson last week, I was supposed to teach you Recaptcha. The only reason I don't usually teach it actually I've never taught it, was because it requires you to have a Gmail account. So that's the kind of downside to it. So you will have to set up a Gmail account to make this work, just so you are aware. In case you don't already have one. You might already have one. Anyway, so what is Google Recaptcha? Well, Recaptcha, the whole purpose of it is to basically reduce the risk of a hacker breaking into your website by using like bots, right? So that's where a bot just goes and finds a website, fills out the form, and auto submits it to see if there's any vulnerabilities in that site. So Recaptcha prevents that because you need to be a human in order to fill out the Recaptcha, in theory, right? Obviously, there's people building, applications using machine learning in order to counteract those things, but that's the case. It works in every browser, every single browser, everywhere, unless for whatever reason you have it shut off somehow, but then you wouldn't be able to do it anyways. But yeah, it works in every browser. So it's a major entry point into hacking a website starts at your website form, right? So it's any interaction that's going to happen in your website. That's where a hacker's going to start. From this input, a user can submit malicious information to hack a site. However, often a hacker isn't interested in trying every website on the internet manually, right? So they don't want to sit there and go from page to page to page to see whether or not they can actually hack it. It's much simpler to do this with a bot or with automation, right? So the user creates a small automation program. It doesn't matter how they do it. Usually they use curl or something like that, but some of them will even use things like Puppeteer, which is kind of funny because it's like Google makes Puppeteer. And you can use Puppeteer to basically act like a human and have it click through a website. So they use something like Puppeteer or Phantom.js or something like that, some sort of way to automate user interactions with your website. They hit the website, they fill out the form, and then they attempt to submit it. So what Google Recaptcha does is when it receives a form submission, it sends back a page or like a puzzle that basically says, hey, you need to solve this puzzle in order to move on to the next stage. The puzzles are usually done in a way that it's not easy for a bot to do it. It'll be like, recognize all the taxis in this image, right? Or point out all the buses or all the traffic lights or something like that. And you have to click the little squares that highlight each of those things, and then you submit it. Sometimes it's like rotate this image, sometimes it's fill out these letters. It varies back and forth, but the point of it is not to make it simple enough that a bot can do it, right? Google Recaptcha is a common implementation used to prevent bots. However, it isn't the only one available. There are many other CAPTCHA libraries, some of them much more robust and can do a lot more, offer more types of puzzles. GitHub actually offers a CAPTCHA library as well. But anyways, yeah, you can implement any type of CAPTCHA library, but the whole idea is the same. It's to prevent bots from filling out a form. There's also something known as the honeypot design pattern, and it's really good for helping trap bots. Essentially what it is a field in your form that you've hidden, right? You've set it in some way to be invisible. And basically what happens is when the bot hits the page, the first thing the bot does usually is disable JavaScript. And the reason why it does that is it doesn't want to get tripped up by validation, right? So if it doesn't have a Google Recaptcha logic inside of it to prevent Recaptcha, it will disable JavaScript on your page and then attempt to fill out your website's form. When it fills out the website form, it hits submit and off it goes. The problem is that it knows what fields to fill out because it pulls the form and analyzes all the fields. When it analyzes all the fields, you have your honeypot field in there. The bot will attempt to fill out the honeypot field. When you get your form on your server, you look to see if the honeypot field contains a value, and if it does, you simply send back a message to the bot saying, everything worked. And the bot goes off thinking it's thwarted you. But really what's happened is it's hit the honeypot field, and you don't have to worry about whatever spam the thing's trying to put inside your server. So between honeypot and Recaptcha, or using a combination of them both, you can usually get rid of probably about 99% of most bot attacks. It's not going to be 100%. And then once you add in validation, client-side validation, as well as server-side validation, sanitization, and normalization, you're like 99.9% of the way there at protecting your website, just with the stuff you learned in this class, right? So those are things to understand. Implementing Google Recaptcha, you need a Gmail account. That's one important aspect of it. But if you have a Gmail account already, you should be able to go to this link. It might say external site. It's just because we're in a WebEx meeting. Just click continue. And you'll hit the Recaptcha page. I'm going to expand it so that we're not getting the kind of bootstrappy shrunk menu. So the first thing we're going to want to do in order to create our Recaptcha is we're going to have to click on this v3 admin console. Is anybody registering? Does anybody have to register a Gmail account before we do this? I just don't want to lose anybody. No? Cool. All right, so go ahead and click on the v3 admin console or log in if you haven't already logged in. So right now I have one site currently set up. It says I have one site, right? But I'm going to create another one. I'm just going to click the plus sign to create. And in here, this is where we set up our site. So the first thing we need to do is give our Recaptcha a name. Takes you to a blank page. Try refreshing. Shouldn't be blank. And if it's blank, it's likely due to something glitched. Or I could just give you this link. That might work too. Try that link. All right. Did that link work for you? Okay, awesome. So in your label, you're going to give your Recaptcha a label. It's not really super important, but the label helps you understand what it is that you're setting Recaptcha for. So our site is super simple. It's just called the registry. So we can literally just call our label the registry. I think you can even just use spaces and stuff. It doesn't matter. And we're going to use the v3 version of the Recaptcha. So we're going to click the little circle to highlight it. So that now becomes the thing that we're using. Your owner, you can share this with other people, and then they have the ability to modify these Recaptchas. It becomes available to them. You can enter their address. That will invite them. If they don't have a Gmail account, they'll have to set it up. But then this Recaptcha admin is shared between them. That's important if you're working for like an agency and people all need access. You would likely set it up under yourself and then register the dev at whatever in order to have that extra piece there. You need to accept the Recaptcha terms of service. And you can send alerts to owners if you want to. It's totally up to you. So you're filling out the label. You're checking the Recaptcha v3. Oh, yeah, we definitely need a domain. So the domain, it doesn't have the HTTP part of it. Your domain is likely just localhost unless you've changed it. So Scott and... completely forgot the other person that was doing it. Scott and Attila, who both have like kind of a modified type server system. You might need to switch your domain from localhost to whatever, but for the rest of you, it's just localhost. Your live server, though, when you want to implement Google Recaptcha onto your live server for your labs, you will need to put your live server domain in here, right? I don't know what your live server domain is, but it's whatever ends in .com or .ca. So you need to go right up to the .com, not the whole directory path. That's important to understand. So you don't want /blah/blah/blah/blah. You just want the domain part. That's the only part we're telling it to be okay with. All right, so I've got my domain in there. So yeah, exactly. Is that what they are? Is .com studies with a .es on it? Yeah, that's yours. Yeah, so that's what you would put in there. So it'd be your domain with the top level domain, which is .whatever, .ca, .com, .es. Once you've done that, go ahead and click submit. And then you need to hold on to this page because if you don't copy these values, you will lose them. So in our project, I have created you a config file. This is where we're going to define those keys. We're going to create a couple of PHP constants and then put the keys in there. Okay, so I need to expand this a little bit so that we can see what's going on. There we go. So to create I don't know if you guys have done PHP constants before, but to create a constant, it's kind of annoying. You have to actually write the word define. Give your constant a name in quotes, like a string. So we're going to call this site key, like so, comma, and then copy the site key code just by clicking the little copy site key button. That's going to go in quotes as well because it is a string. Don't use my site key because I'm likely going to just delete it after this lesson. So you probably don't want to use my site key. Not that it really matters, but the next thing is we want to define another variable to hold this secret key. So again, we'll do define. We'll do secret key. And then we'll copy that secret key, paste it into here, and add our semicolon at the end. So obviously I'm not going to copy this and give it to you because it doesn't make sense. Just copy your own information and use your own information. So once we've done that and we have our keys and they're defined in our config, we can now use our Google Recaptcha inside our forms. So we're going to kind of change gears a little bit here. We're going to work on something else, but we are still going to implement the Google Recaptcha portion into our form in a few minutes. But the first thing I want to do is actually set up our databases so that our SQL is all correct as well. So however you want to do this, whether you want to use phpMyAdmin or whether you want to use Workbench, there are two SQL files in here. There's an admins.sql and there's a users.sql, and you can use either one of, or sorry, you can use both of those. I haven't decided if we're going to actually learn the admin side of this. I don't think we will. What I might do instead is just modify the quiz and remove some questions that are related to it. There's technically three types of validation. There's digest, there's basic, and there's form validation. There's actually way more than that, but those are the three that Jess talks about in her slide deck. And so I'm assuming we're going to use one of the examples to show how to do basic validation. But yeah, I'm not sure if I want to do that yet. I haven't decided. All right, so I created a database the other day called the registry, but we'll just continue to use the database table because there is users in mine. I've got users in admin. You guys can go ahead and create yours, right? So just go to the users table, copy it, paste it into your you know what I'm trying to say, your database administration tool, and run it. And then do the same thing with admin when you're done that. And then just say done in the chat channel so that I know that you've finished that. I'm done. Didn't you have this issue a couple of weeks ago, Steph, and it turned out that you can't use Workbench, you have to use phpMyAdmin? Wasn't that the problem? I know some of you had an issue of trying to use Workbench and it wouldn't work for you. You had to use the my and min, which is usually indicative that you have two databases running, like two SQL instances running. Once you're finished, you're going to want to go to the connect.php, and this might be the reason why you can't connect stuff. You might need to modify your... Oh, yeah, because it's likely your details are not the same. You might have root. Instead, I have root and no password for mine. So you might need to modify your connect details. Oh, you're going to connect.php? Look at the path. It's not connect.php. It's underscore connect.php. There's an underscore there. Sneaky. Yeah, trickster. Tricky Ricky. There's nothing new in this connect file, by the way, just so you guys know. Yeah, that's good. This connect file, it's just connecting as usual. The only difference is this line here, which I think we did last time, and I explained it to you last time. Basically, it turns on error mode handling, which is super important because when the database throws errors, you don't get those errors back unless this is on. So you have no idea that actually anything happened with your database. So that's things like SQL errors, not connection errors. Connection errors will always throw. But SQL errors, you have to actually say, you have to do like a SQL request and then say, oh, did that work? And then the thing's like, no, you got an error. You're like, cool, can I have the error? That kind of thing. This prevents that from happening and makes it a little bit easier. I don't know why it's not on by default. I'm assuming it's because in a production environment, you would probably want to suppress your errors and only do this in development. But I can tell you for a fact, in a production environment, you do not want to suppress your errors. You just want to pipe them into something else, right? You don't want to let the user see it, but you definitely want to pipe them into like a logging platform or something like that so that you can see those errors. All right, so I've got my config files. I've set up my database things. I am happy. I don't need Workbench open anymore. I'm going to just close it. Set this guy back up. There we go. Shrink it down and go to my registry. And we are ready to create something. So right now we're on this registry page, right? We have a register button and a login button. The register button will allow us to actually register a new user. The login button will allow us to log in. None of this actually works yet, just to give you a heads up. But the whole point of authorization and authentication is to actually create gateways to content, right? It's creating like a controlled gateway that will allow a user to access specific content or paid for content or whatever reason that we're blocking it, allow them to access that content. Sometimes it might be user specific content, right? Like, so Facebook, for example, when you log into Facebook, you don't see your buddy's Facebook, you see your Facebook, right? And it's very personalized to you, right? So it's your name, it's your likes, it's your dislikes. Or does the dislike button even exist anymore? I think it's gone, right? It's only likes. I don't really use it all that much. Anyways, so it's all of your stuff. Same with Twitter. When you log into Twitter, you can tweet as you, right? So when you're commenting on something or writing a new post, it's all from you. So that's one cool feature of authentication, to personalize those pieces for you. But sometimes it's also just to gateway content, right? So like Netflix, for example, when you log into Netflix, yes, you see a lot of the same content that anybody else can see as well, but it also gateways it, right? So you can't, as an unpaid subscriber to Netflix, access that content, right? You can't watch that stuff as an unpaid subscriber. So authentication is super important because it's a huge part of the web. It literally creates those wonderful little gateways in order for us to restrict access to content. The idea of authentication, like the design pattern behind authentication, gets a little bit trickier because it depends on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to block. And there's a few different types of authentication that you have available to you. For example, there is basic authentication. What basic authentication allows you to do is access is just basically set it on the page. You don't need a database for it. You don't need anything for it, really. You just need a password and a login ID, and you just stick those in PHP. The user hits the page, and then you can block access to it. So we're going to set something up like that just right now, just so that we can kind of see that. I have created a page in here called admin.php, but I don't want you to actually use it because it's kind of not doing what I want to show. I didn't remove anything from it. Let's create a new file, actually. We'll create a new file, and we'll just call it basic auth.php. So just a simple name, just basic auth.php. So this is going to be our very simple PHP basic auth test, so you can see how this works. We'll just create a simple PHP page, and then we'll just create something that's kind of gated content, right? So echo. Actually, no, we don't want to do an echo statement. We'll do an H1 statement here, and just say you have gained access. There we go. And let's just navigate in our browsers to that basic auth page as well. Basic auth.php. So right now we are instant access because we have no authentication whatsoever in place. There's no way to really know what's, we're not blocking anybody. We haven't done anything. We haven't stopped nobody. So how can we actually block someone from accessing this page? Well, with basic, we have a few different options. We could use form authentication, which is where we build a little login page, and then they fill out the login, hit submit, and then that allows them access, and we can actually check to see if they're logged in. We can use digestive authentication, which is, it's a little bit more sophisticated. Essentially what we do is we send a series of requests. The browser actually sends back a response to us. Then we resend a request using the same response that they provided, and they give us access at that point. That's a little bit more sophisticated, but arguably just as bad as what we're going to do now, which is basic auth. Basic auth is a very simple way to implement authentication in the browser. What it does, though, is it takes the login details, it converts them to a base64, which is just like a way to encode things, and then sends that back to the page, and then you can use the base64 to see if they've actually logged in or not. Not necessarily the greatest way to do this type of thing, but that's how it's done. The problem is both basic auth and digestive authentication are both subjected to potential middlemen and attacks where there's somebody sitting in the middle and they can read that data. So if you're going to use those, you want to make sure you're using SSL, which stands for Secure Socket Layer. The whole purpose of an Ssl certificate, which is a certification that you provide to your website, is it creates encryption between your request and the server, right? So any communication that is happening between the request, the server, and then the response is all encrypted, and it's can only be decrypted by the requester or by the responder. So it's encrypted communication. If you have encrypted communication, then basic auth is a little bit more protected. Same with digestive authentication. It's a little bit more protected. But I mean, it doesn't give you the benefits that form validation does, where you can actually do multiple level authentication, provide better user experiences when it comes to authentication, like password memories and stuff like that. There's a lot more to those that provide a better level of authentication. So we're going to implement super simple basic authentication. We're going to create an if condition first. And basically all our if condition is going to do is it's going to check to see if we're logged in. And the way we check to see if we're logged in is we check this variable that's stored in the server associative array called php_auth user. So we're trying to see if this is set. If that value is not set, then the user has not logged in. In order to use our basic registration, we need to set some headers. Headers are what we actually pass with requests and responses. It tells the browser, it basically provides information to the browser on how it's supposed to be operating. So we're going to send a header called www-authenticate. We need to spell this correctly. :basic. And then we need to give it a realm. And usually the realm is your website itself. It can literally be anything you want, any random string you really want to create. So if we're not logged in, it's going to throw this. And then what we can do is basically check a header. So we're going to throw the authentication, and we're also going to 401 unauthorized page. And what that's going to do is the user will hit the page. They will get a 401 if they hit cancel. They will definitely get this 401 unauthorized. They won't see our content down below here because they need to be authorized in order to see it. Actually, they will see this right now because it's kind of public, but we can hide it. We're going to hide it. You know what? We should just do that in our else statement here. Let's do that in our else statement. We'll just echo this out because I don't feel like dealing with HTML. I'm going to drag that into there. Right. So now we can say whatever we want to say if they're not logged in. It's going to say log in. Cool. There. So super simple logic. If I refresh the page, I get this wonderful little sign-in thing. If I think I can bypass it by just hitting cancel, it tells me to log in, fool. I'm not allowed to log in unless I have these credentials. However, we have a problem. If I just type in ASDF, and hit sign in, I've gained access because I fulfilled my requirements. This is now automatically set because I have provided those details. So I can now log in. So we have another step that we need to do. So if this is set, we now want to just check to see whether or not the password and the username matches a password and username that we want to allow. So I'm going to say if $_server PHP auth user does not equal, and I'll just give some random username. Maybe it's Bob. His name is Bob. If it doesn't match Bob, then we can echo log in with the correct username. And we can exit. And why not, right? Otherwise, we can do if $server PHP auth, and then the next thing we want to check is the actual password to see whether or not the password is correct, which we check by checking PW. If it's incorrect, then we can say log in with the correct password, but we need to choose a password here. What are we going to do for a password? Does not equal I like puppies. That's going to be a problem. All right, so yours doesn't actually open that little little window. What browser are you using, Dimitri? Explorer? That's super weird. Like Internet Explorer or like Edge? Like this one? Edge? Maybe that's a little better than a little better. Not much, but a little better. Let's see if we can pull that up. What did I name the page? Basic Auth. Works for me. I don't know what to say. Did you check your code? Does it match what I just posted up here? Because even if you have one of these words wrong, right? Like say you don't spell authenticate properly, and then you refresh, it's just going to say log in with the correct username because it's not going to have that, right? I need to destroy that server value. Hold on. I need to unset PHP auth user. Yeah, unset. Okay, so it says login fool, right? Yeah, see if I refresh, it won't pop the dialog. You need to make sure that this is spelled correctly. Which is likely your same issue there, Mitty. Something is spelt wrong. Yep, that's what it's supposed to do. If it asks you to sign in, that's doing exactly what we want it to do. So now to log in, all I need to do is give it the proper information. If I hit cancel, it's going to tell me login fool. So to get it right, I just need to type in Bob and I like puppies. And then click sign in and I've gained access. Now, you can, if you wanted to, pair this up with a server, right? Or sorry, with a database and actually do database administration as well. So you could potentially, and I do show an example of this in the admin.php. You basically get them to fill out this information, and once you have it, the server name and the password, you can then do a database check, see if those credentials are in the database, and if they are, then you can go ahead and log in the user, right? But that's an extra step, and at that point, if you're doing that, you might as well use form validation, and it doesn't make sense to use the other type of validation at all then. If you want to log out your user, all you need to do is unset those two server values, and then the user's logged out. Super simple. There is a page in PHP that talks about this type of stuff. Which is called HTTP authentication, and it covers both digestive and basic authentication, which we just covered. You can bookmark this page because I think the questions that Jess has put on your test actually use a lot of the answers from this page. So that will be helpful to you. However, going forward for us, we're not going to use this authentication. We're going to use form authentication, which means if we go back to just our lesson 10 form, our 10 page, we're back at the registry. Yeah. Hold on, Mitty. Did you do Bob and I like puppies as the things it's checking against, Yulia? Is your code the same as mine? Do you have this unset, uncommented? Because you need to comment it out, or it will keep glitching. Comment it out, otherwise it keeps clearing that variable, and then you can't match it. Because essentially what it does is it does this weird kind of like loop request. So you fill out the form, you hit submit, it submits the request again, and then it goes through. Mitty, you have this with this commented out? Yeah, we can look at it at the break, Mitty. Okay. So before that, I do want to get our Google Recaptcha set up inside our form. Inside the registry page, if you click register, that will take you to the registration form that we're going to work on. So the registration form, if you were to hit register right now, it's just going to go to a blank page because we don't actually have anything working yet. We need to fill out our blank page, but before we do that, we want to implement Google Recaptcha on this page. So you can find the register.php page just inside your IDE there. Go ahead and open that up. So what we want to do is implement our Google Recaptcha. If you scroll down, everything we need to do for Google Recaptcha is going to basically happen at the bottom of our page here. Right here where it says add Recaptcha field. This is where we're going to do all of the magic to deal with Recaptcha. So the first thing we're going to need is a URL that points to the Recaptcha API so that we can actually get our Recaptcha value. We need to import our config. So let's do that first. So we'll open up PHP and we'll include once, or even require once works as well, our config.php. If you refresh, nothing should break. That's going to include our site key and our secret key for us. Next, we're going to need a chunk of JavaScript. Do I want to explain it? Not really. This chunk of JavaScript is the recommended way to do this anyways. So I want you to copy it, and I want you to paste it under line 83, and then just fix it so that it's in place. There you go. I'll quickly explain what it does. Basically, ready is a method on the Recaptcha, which is coming from this script here that's getting loaded. What it's basically doing is checking to see whether or not Google's Recaptcha library has loaded properly and it's ready to go. Once it's ready, which is an event, once it's ready, it's going to execute this function. This is known as an arrow function, by the way. None of this will be on a test, so don't freak out. It's going to execute this function call, which is known as a callback. It's going to call execute, which is just a function that's on the Recaptcha library. The things we need to know is that this is a little chunk of PHP echoing out our site key for us. It needs the site key in order to connect to the Google Recaptcha. That's super important. Without the site key, it can't do it. The other thing it needs to know is where we're putting in our field, right? So we need to provide a field called the Recaptcha response field. And I think I already have it in here. I'm pretty sure I included it. Maybe I didn't. I did not. Yeah, I did not. We need to create that field or we're going to have a problem. So actually this script that I just gave you, all the bits and pieces of this script are going to need to move down. So we're going to hit Control X and it needs to go here on line 92. So everything that was underneath there needs to go on line 92. I'm sorry. I put it in the wrong spot. We actually need to create our Recaptcha field up there. So move that to line 92. Your PHP include, the script tag loading in that source, and then the script tag with the actual JavaScript. All right, now we just need to create that field. The field's super easy to create. It's just an input field. It's going to have type hidden because we don't want it to be shown. It's going to have the name Recaptcha, captcha, like so, response. And then it's going to have an ID called Recaptcha response written in camel case. And I will copy that and give that to you guys. And then I'm going to save and refresh my page. And if everything is working, you should see the little Recaptcha logo down at the bottom. That means we have Recaptcha. We are recaptchaing, if that's a verb. I don't think that's a verb. Okay, so it's those two steps. One, add this Recaptcha field. And you would do this in any PHP project you need to do. You can just literally copy and paste it in place. And then add the Recaptcha script in. And then that will add your little Recaptcha field for you. Nice and easy. So our page right now is actually pointing at an insert.php script where we're actually going to do the insert. Huh? I don't know what you mean by added the Recaptcha field, but it didn't add my password yet. I'm not sure what you mean, Mitty. Do you see this little thing down here, this Recaptcha thing? Are you getting that? I'm not sure what you mean by the password fields, though. We didn't modify the password fields. Oh, that's not anything. That's just because I have one password. One password auto fills in those fields for me. If you had one password, it would do the same for you. It's not something, I don't even know if I can turn it off. I can remove it, which I'm not going to do. But it's just filling in those fields. Sorry, what does it say? So I see the thing, but mine says I have a problem with the domain localhost. So the domain is this domain here, Dimitri. Do you have localhost as your domain, or is it something else? I think it satisfies it. This actually absolutely tells them that we're using it because it's a little logo there. It's localhost, Dimitri. I mean, as long as your Recaptcha settings are correct. So if you go to settings, you can actually see your Recaptcha thing. Make sure you spell localhost correctly in there, because if it's spelled incorrectly, it won't work. And it's just the word localhost. It's nothing else. Yeah, absolutely. If you have like AdSense or something like that, it can definitely mess up Recaptcha stuff. I've never seen AdSense do it, but I have seen other things do it. Yeah. All right. This sounds like a wow. We still have one more step. I want to implement the Recaptcha into the insert PHP to make sure it's working. Just so we can see whether or not it's actually working. But it sounds like we've got a little too many errors happening out there that we need to address. So why don't we take a 10-minute break? 15. Well, we'll go to 4:15. So you can have a break till 4:15. Those of you that are having issues, I will help you. But yeah, that's the best thing we can do, and you guys can share your screens and stuff. All right, so let's take a break to 4:15 for now. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Mitty, if you want to go ahead and share your screen. There's 2 Yulias. Why is there 2? It's probably because, yeah, I'm guessing that Yulia had to connect twice, and one just didn't drop off. It just stuck around. Same thing happens in Zoom and in Google Hangouts. I don't know. Which one is the real Yulia? Yeah, it's probably just an issue. Are you also not able to communicate? Are your permissions all goofy again? See, I can't just right-click on things. Let me try this again. Assign privileges. Everyone. Okay. Can you do it now? Awesome. Reconnect multiple times. You made mine work too. Great. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Just before I help you, Steph, Mitty, can you please share your screen and show me what's going on so I can help you? So we're fixing the Recaptcha thing, or are we fixing the local basic auth thing? I don't know what thing we're fixing.
So we're just fixing the authentication file. So the basic auth, that's what we're fixing.
Oh, your Recaptcha's working now?
Yeah.
Oh, it was working. Okay, so what's the issue with the basic auth again?
So the basic is just it's signing to access. It's not the same as yours.
I don't know what you mean by it's not the same as mine. Let's see here. Okay, so authenticate is spelled correctly. Yep. I mean, it must be because you're doing the actual thing. Bob and I like puppies. And if all that passes, you should see you have gained. All right, so go ahead and fill out the username password and then hit sign in. So you're filling out that with Bob, right?
Okay.
And then your password is I like puppies. And hit sign in. Yeah, it works.
Oh, okay.
It's only because you showed me. If you hadn't showed me, it still wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
All right, so who else had an issue? Dimitri, you had an issue, did you not? Yours is a little bit more significant because yours is dealing with the... oh, you fixed it. Okay, awesome. Steph, what's your issue?
Hi.
Hello.
So with my basic auth, let me share my screen.
Yep.
With my basic auth, it just gives me this, and I've been trying to figure out which button I need to push to get that little window. So...
Oh, there's no buttons. It should come up automatically. So let's take a look and see what you've got here. So you have www-authenticate, which is what I have. Let me just make sure that's what I have. Yeah. Sorry, I need to see your code again.
Oh,
So www-authenticate. Yep, spelled correct. Basic. Yep, realm, the registration. HTTP 1.0. Change that from 404 to a 401. Just because 404 is not found, 401 is unauthorized. So that's the correct one that you want back.
oh, there we go.
Yeah. So what was happening is you were getting a 404, so it was rejecting it. The 401 allows the little form to pop up.
Got it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. That's also interesting, actually, Steph, because I didn't know that changing that status code would actually change how it works. So that's kind of interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, chats. Chat. There we go. Yes, 100%. In fact, I would like you to do that if you can, Chisato. Just because it makes my life a little bit easier instead of having to pull open code I've already pulled open, or haven't pulled open before, pulling open new code. I will be marking your phase projects. So I don't know, some people don't seem to get my announcements. I don't know how. If you're not getting announcements, you 100% need to check out with IT and make sure that you're getting the announcements to the correct email address. I actually had a student in semester 4 that had never set up their Georgian email address. They just didn't. They just thought they were never going to use it, so they never set it up. And that's a big problem because there's a lot of things that come through that email address. So make sure you have it set up. Anyways, I sent out an announcement telling you guys some of your projects I don't have access to. So the reason is because you guys have invited Jess. There's no way for Jess to just assign me ownership of those invites. You actually have to re-invite me. So some of you have already done that, and that's awesome. But for those of you that haven't, make sure you do that. And if you're talking to anybody who doesn't come to class, make sure you tell them the same thing. Just say, hey, Sean can't mark your phase 1 if you don't invite him, especially like if it's a private repo, right? So make sure you invite me. I will mark all of those, not tomorrow, but Friday. I'm going to take my whole Good Friday and just finish off all that phase 1 marking. I've started going through them piece by piece. Some of yours I were able to mark anyways. Like, for example, one student shared a video of how to do the CRUD operation. And so even though I wasn't able to access the code, I was able to mark it because they could prove that it was operational. So I just used that to basically prove that. Yeah. Also, make sure you fill out your forms, especially if you guys have these monolithic forms. Like some of you got like 16 fields in a form, which is totally fine. I'm not against that. Well, I'm kind of against that from a user experience, but that's a different conversation. But if you've got like 16 things in a field and I'm trying to fill out the 16 field entries, which I should just create a script to do it. But if I'm filling out those 16 field entries, tell me in your fields what you're expecting there, right? Because it's kind of problematic when I go to fill it out and it's like, it looks like it's fine. I hit submit and everything seems to go, but then it doesn't create the record. And it's something like, I don't know, you have some sort of restriction on a field that I don't know about, right? And this happened in probably about 6 different sites where you had restrictions on a field that I didn't know about, so I didn't know what I was filling out. So usually the way I mark is I will attempt your live version first, and I will try to make sure I can do the operations in the live version to make sure everything's there. Then I go through and just check your code quickly to make sure you have the component pieces that you're required and that your code is formatted correctly. That's it. That's all I do. I don't download your code even. Most times I just view it right on GitHub. So just so you know, I don't run your code locally unless it errors out. And if it errors out and I can't run it live, I usually get annoyed enough that I really look through your code. And if I find errors, I deduct marks for errors because you're making me go through all of that code. But just keep that in mind. Test your stuff. That's really what it boils down to. Or as I like to say to my junior developers, test your shit. That's what you need to do. Test your shit. All right. Becky still got a co-op. Who got a co-op? What are we talking about? I don't know. It seems like I've had students who are like stellar and still can't seem to find co-ops. It's really tricky out there. Incidentally, the company I work for, Lab Media Group, did any of you attend the lecture for Lab Media Group with Adrian? So like Georgian put on this thing, and a representative from Lab Media Group, one of our senior developers, Adrian, came in and he spoke about working at Lab Media Group and what it's like and what our tech stack is. Did anybody manage to catch that, or were you guys not a part of that? So Lab Media Group is a huge Georgian college hiring partner. So we often have co-ops that we put out and we look for Georgian college students. And it's kind of funny because Katrina, who is our project manager and she's kind of in charge of our department, said that we don't actually get a lot of applicants, which is totally crazy to me. I figured we'd get tons of applicants, but we don't get a lot of applicants. Yeah, that's annoying. Yeah, I agree, Yulia. It should be recorded. I can actually check with Adrian to see if it was recorded. And if it was, then I'll get the recording out to you guys. But I'll check with Adrian and see if it was recorded. I don't know if he had recorded it or not, or whether or not the group recorded it. Yeah, no problem. But basically what it was about our tech stack at LMG. So we use Node. That's the main feature of our tech stack. And most times people use the MERN stack, which is Mongo, Express, React, and Node. We use Express, React, Node, but we don't use Mongo. We use MySQL. So we're connecting to a relational database in our stack using something called Connects. But yeah, if that kind of stack interests you, and that's something that you're kind of interested into getting to, when we get the positions open, make sure, even if you don't see the position loaded into the co-op thing, because that's where it should go, then definitely just send a resume to LMG anyways, outlining what you do, right? So just say, these are the technologies I know. They usually look for, in our dev team, we are looking more for fourth year students just because we need you to know Node before you join. We don't do a ton of PHP. We do a little bit. We have one product that uses PHP, but it uses a framework called Magento. So you would need to know Magento in order to do that. But if you have experience with Node already, definitely apply. Node.js, yeah, that's our server. What is it called again? The stack? The stack we use is Node.js. I'll just write it down. It's Node. Oh, LMG, Lab Media Group. I'll send you the link. Lab Media Group. So you can look at the positions we're currently hiring for. It's not the same though, because we're looking for. So what we are essentially, because I should probably explain that. What we are is a publishing. We're not a publishing company ourselves. We have several brands that deal with science publishing, right? So they publish articles to the science community, and they're different types. So we have a brand called The Scientist, which is super formal. It's like papers and stuff like that written by people with PhDs. We have Lab Media, or sorry, not Lab Media, Lab Manager and Clinical Lab Manager, which are more oriented towards people in the science community working with like lab equipment and stuff. And then we have Drug Discovery News, which is more about up and coming pharmaceuticals. And then we have Lab Wrench and Media Wrench, as well as Lab X. So Lab Wrench and Media Wrench are forums where you can go and talk to other people about science and about different things to deal with lab equipment and stuff. And then we have Lab X, which is our Magento product, which is a full eBay-like thing, but for scientists, right? So scientists can buy and sell lab equipment, essentially. So like if you wanted an X-ray machine, like a $70,000 X-ray machine, Lab X is where you would go to buy it, kind of thing. So we have a lot of different types of people. We have editorial who write these articles, and most of them have master's degrees and PhDs and stuff. We have groups of people who do marketing, right? So that's the guys that are going to do all of our advertising and stuff. So we're always looking for graphic designers as well. They also look for web developers, like just simple basic web developers who can do like WordPress and stuff like that, Shopify, those kind of things. But then we also have a development team that works on each of the brand websites, and each of the brand websites are built in Node, MySQL, React, and Express. However, some of them use MS SQL, which you guys already have experience with or will have when you start working with ASP.NET. So yeah, we have about 150 employees. So the jobs that are here right now don't necessarily point to you guys, but we do hire co-ops all the time. We're always looking for co-ops. So yeah, just keep that in mind. And that's 417 now. Jeez. Sorry about the tangents. I tend to go on tangents. I get distracted really easily too. All right. We have our register page. It has this little piece here. I just want to confirm that that thing actually works. So what would be nice is if I click register, I hit this page, I want to see whether or not that little thing is there. Now, when you click register, like so, sometimes Google will interfere and produce a little box and get you to fill it out. Sometimes they won't. So it just depends on whether or not they've considered you to be more of a human. I don't know. That's just how it works. All right. Let's take a look at insert.php, which should be a gigantic blank page. Let me share my screen because I just realized I'm not sharing. Thanks, Elizabeth. I totally realized afterwards. So I'll pull my chat window open as well. All right. Just making sure I've got everything in place here. So the first thing we're going to need to do is include our config file because it contains all of our information for our actual recaptcha, right? So we need to make sure we have that config.php file in there, or we won't be able to do our recaptcha. And then to make our lives a little handier, I know we haven't done this in the past, I'm going to create a function for doing error handling. So essentially what will happen is if we wind up with any errors, we can actually call the error handler function, and then it will handle relocating for us and all that type of stuff. Part of the reason why I want to do that is because we're actually going to store errors in our session and then have that output those errors in a notification include that we'll have. You'll see what I mean as we do it. So the first thing we're going to do is build that function itself. We're going to create a function called error handler. And it's going to take, it has one parameter called errors, which will be an array in the end. We should probably make sure our session is started. So notice I'm not starting this at the top of the file. I'm just starting it right here. Perfectly good enough. But this is only a processing script. It's not going to be a view. So it's not going to actually output any visual information to the screen. It will only deal with processing our data. So really all we want to do is just basically count the errors. If there are any errors, then we want to go ahead and basically set out our session variables. So if we do count $errors is greater than 0, then we're going to do a few things. The first thing we're going to do is basically take our session. We're going to add a new property to it called errors, or a new key, I should say, and we're going to store the errors in it. So these errors here are going to get stored into this thing. Then we're going to redirect. to the PHP page, and that's where we'll likely output our errors. And we want to exit our script because we don't want our script to continue processing after we have relocated. I don't know if you guys knew that, but if you redirect and you still have code below, it will continue to process that code, even though you're now at a different page altogether. So if you're redirecting and then you're like, hey, this still inserted records in my database, it's likely because you forgot to exit after you redirected. Actually, you don't need them. Which is kind of funny, Jesse. So Jesse, you guys can't see it, but he said parentheses on line 14. You don't actually need them. You can just write exit. Just like you can also just write die if you wanted to. But I like exit. It's a little less cataclysmic. Terminal. So there's one other thing I want to cover a little bit. When an error happens on a form, especially your forms, right? The forms that you guys do feels more final. Yeah, it does, definitely. That's funny that you say that. There's a George Carlin sketch where he talks about terminals being in airports, and he's like, why do people call these things terminals? You know, terminals sounds very final, sounds deadly. Anyways, there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that's when we're creating a form and we send a user, you know, they submit their form and we send them to another script and we process that script, we have to be considerate of a couple of things. One, we're processing that script, and if we hit an error, how are we going to handle that? Yes, we're obviously going to log the error and show them that there was an error, but what are we going to do with the data that they submitted to us? Are we just going to dump it, send them back to the form, and make them refill it out? Like, for example, some of you literally have almost 16 fields in your forms. Can you imagine being a user, filling out that form, hitting submit, getting an error, coming back to your form, and having to fill it out all over again? Right? No, that is an option. Some people do that. They'll save the information that is correct and then talk about the information that isn't. I have seen that pattern in some things. We're not going to do that pattern just because it's a little bit more complicated, because it would actually require us to fill out that user, send them back to the page, and keep track of that information. We're going to keep track of the information. We're just not going to save it in the database. So we are going to kind of do what you're talking about. Where could we save that user's information? So when you actually submit a form, the post variable, right, it only lasts for that request, right? So you have all the data inside the post variable that the user has submitted. You get that into your next page, but the second we redirect, those values are gone. Yeah, absolutely. Like Alex says, in the session, that's the best place for us to store that information. So I'm going to create a variable here. I'm going to use the session variable, and I'm going to create a new key in it called form values. And what do you think I'm going to make it equal to? Think about where our form values are currently. I know you guys haven't used this thing all that much. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to use the post variable. Because at the end of the day, the post variable is just an associative array. That's all it is, right? It's just nicely created for us by PHP. All of the form values from our form here are sitting inside this post variable. So what I can do is I can take all the values in the post variable, assign them off to form values, so now they're in there, redirect back to the registration page, and I have access to everything sitting in the session. So even if there's an error, I can still come back to this page and deal with the error. So that's cool. We got this nice little function here, you know, not too elaborate, pretty easy to work with. I'm going to share it. There you go. Now what I want to do is be able to deal with errors in register. So when I get an error in register, how am I going to display it? So there's a few ways for me to deal with that. Just need to pull open my code here. All right, so the first thing I want to do right at the top is actually start my session, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to access that information. I want to access the different pieces of session data. I want the form values, and I want any notification messages that I need, right? Only I'm not actually going to access the notification messages here. The only thing I'm going to access here are those form values, and I'm going to store them in a variable, and you might be like, well, why are you storing them? What reason do we have to store them? When we have form values right there, we could just use it. The reason why I'm storing the session variables, why I'm storing these form values out of the session, is because once I've filled out the form with those values and the user leaves the page and goes and does something else, and then they come back at a later point, if we still have these session values existing, it will refill out the form. So what we want to do is, after we have assigned it, we want to clear those values out. And we can use the method unset to do that. So we're starting our session so we can access session variables, right? Because we can't access the session variable otherwise. We're taking the values currently stored inside form values on our session and shoving them into a variable, right? Then we unset those form values. So right now, this is where our values are currently stored. So how are we actually going to use these form values? Well, I've already kind of done that for you. If you come down here, you will notice that I have labels on your inputs here. I have the value field here, and I've filled out the information. What you also might notice is this odd operator I have here. Does anybody know what that operator does? I think we've talked about it once before. What does that strange operator do? Not quite. So in most languages, we have the ability to use logical operators to determine which value we want to do, right? So for example, I could type, I'm just typing this into the chat. I could type something like A equals five or false. So I could do this in JavaScript. I could type that in JavaScript, and the value of A will be 5. Because what it's essentially saying is 5 or false. So if 5 was false valued, right? So if it was null, undefined, or some false value, it will automatically take the value to the right-hand side of that. So it would take false. Otherwise, it'll be 5. So let's see if you guys kind of understand this. Yeah, it's basically, I don't know. No, because isn't the question mark in Java a ternary operator? Or does it not work like that in Java? Yeah, ternary is different. So ternary, if I was to write the same statement as a ternary, it would be this. That's what it would look like, right? So it would be A equals 5. So 5 would be a question on whether it's a true value, and then I would return 5. Otherwise, I would return false. Yeah. So no, it's checking if it's false is basically what it is. So let's see if we can kind of see some of these. So tell me what the value of this will be. What will be the value of A? Will it be 10 or 7? Okay, so Elizabeth says 7. And Attila says 10. Right. So which one will it be though, Yulia? Because it will only be one value. It will not be 10 or 7. 10. Okay. So Attila and Yulia, you are both correct. It will be 10 because 10 will resolve as true. What about this statement? What will the value of A be? Absolutely. It will be 19. Why is it 19? That's right, Alex. It'll be either the first name value or null. Can anybody tell me why the answer is 19? So you need to kind of understand what falsy is, right? So falsy, things that are false. Yeah, exactly. Null is falsy. So things that are false are null, undefined, false, and sometimes 0 depending on the programming language, right? So null, undefined, and false are all falsy values. Truthy values are literally everything else. So everything else is truth. So 19, is that true or false? Absolutely, it's true. Null, true or false? Absolutely, it's false. So what we're essentially doing is we're comparing and saying if the left side of the operator or is false, then automatically return the right side. If the left side of the operator is true, then return the left side. However, PHP does not use or symbols. You can't type or in here because if you type or in here, what will happen is this will return a Boolean. So it will spit out a Boolean value. We don't want it to spit out a Boolean value. We want it to spit out either this side if it contains a value, right? So if it's not null, if it's not undefined, and it's not false, then we want to return that. Otherwise, we want to return null. So PHP has a special operator, the double question mark, which basically checks that. It checks that this is set. It checks that it is not null, and it checks that it is not false, and it will return it back for us. So the reason why this is important is because we need to do this up here as well. We are assuming that the session form values exist. However, if I click refresh, I get undefined index form values, and I'm getting that because this key is not available inside the session associative array. So I can fix this by doing question null and hit refresh, which will now return a null value, store that in form values, and you'll notice that nothing is blowing up. All of our fields are okay. So does that mean if first name is empty, it will give us null? Yes. So it will be null. Yes, it'll be null. No, first name empty, that's a different scenario altogether. So you have to be careful because empty does not mean the same thing. If I say, give me this, or give me 15, right? So either echo the empty string or 15. What do you think will echo out to the screen? Yep. So if I hit refresh, notice we get no 15. The reason is that these quotations technically are a value, even though they're empty. However, if I want to make this work, I can use this. I can say empty, right? So if this is empty, right, that's going to be true. So what do I need to do to it to fix it? So that it returns a Boolean. Yep, we need to put the not operator in front of it. So if this is not empty, then it will return, actually it won't return anything, which is kind of funny. That's interesting. Where's my 15? This is a Boolean, which would return false. Maybe I've got that wrong. I'm getting 1 because it's returning true. But it should return 15. I don't know why it's not returning 15. If it is, I can't see it. Yeah, it's not returning 15 for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. What about if I just do a hard code false? False. Still not returning 15. That's interesting. I don't know why that's happening. It should be definitely returning 15. If I just type in Sean here. Weird. Maybe I don't understand how this double question mark works. Maybe it always returns a nullified value. No, that's not how it works. It absolutely does not work like that. What if I wrap it? Huh. Nope. Has nothing to do with outside the header, because if I put in this side, Tom, I'll get Tom. It should automatically, if this is false, return back Sean. It might be because it only works by reference, which would be really annoying. Nope. Yeah, I don't know why that's not working. That is definitely not how it's supposed to work. I know for a fact this is a thing, so I'm not sure why that's not doing what it's supposed to do. Anyways, we're going to see it in operation in a second anyways. So we have all this filled out. If I hit register, I'm going to hit this page of our insert.php. We can actually now add our errors to see if we have the PHP values, and if there are any errors, then we can go ahead and return it back. However, we need to deal with one more thing in order to make all this work so we can actually see our errors. So there is another file called notification.php that we're going to quickly create. And it will deal with all of our errors for us. Sorry, what is that? It should check if it exists or it's null. Yeah, you see, that's the weird thing. I don't know why PHP is treating that operator weirdly. It's the null coalescent number or operator, so maybe I'm wrong in how that actually works. It should be in our logical operators. It's not the logical operators. Returns the value of x. The value of x is expression 1. If expression exists, is it not null? Otherwise, it does not exist or it is null. So this operator, I was using it correctly. So I don't know why it's not working for whatever reason. Not a big deal. We'll just leave it for now. I'll take a look at that, yeah. Because sometimes, yeah, that's the other thing too. Sometimes the way you think something's implemented in PHP is not exactly how it's implemented, and there's some glitchiness to it. So our notification is going to be included on other pages. So there's something very, very important to understand. Sessions cannot be started more than once. Did you guys cover that already? You can't start a session more than once, right? So we need to check to see if the session is already started. So if we do session start, right? Or sorry, status, not start. Status equals, and then check against one of the already set session variables that they create for us. So this will tell us if there's a session already. So if there is no session, which is what this is basically saying, we're going to use session start. So that will actually start up our session. Yeah, it is funny. Well, what's funny about it, Lucas, is that usually the OR operator, the logical OR, is used for that, and it does not return a Boolean. But in PHP, it returns a Boolean. You should even try it in Java. Just use the regular operator OR and see if it works, because I bet you it will. Works in PHP, or not in PHP, in JavaScript. All right, so this is going to start our session. The next thing we want to do is store our errors. So we're going to literally do the same kind of pattern that we did with form values. we're going to take the session errors, if there are any, right? And then we're going to unset those session errors. But we'll do that after we also set our successes. Which can also be null. And then we can clear those variables. So we'll unset $_session errors. And then we'll unset $_session successes. After that, we can go ahead and build our response boxes. So our response boxes are actually going to be a little bit of HTML that output a label basically at the top of the page saying, hey, this thing went wrong. I'll give you this little bit of code first, though. Darn it, I hate it when I accidentally hit copy instead of paste. I did it last night, too. There we go. So the response boxes are a little weird. I think we're going to be cheeky. I didn't do this last night, and I kind of wish we had of. I'm going to create a function called message. But because this is going to be included, I want to make sure that I put an underscore in front of it, just in case I create another function or another variable called message somewhere else. This will help me keep it kind of private. So what this is going to essentially do is it's going to take our errors and an alert type. So we need to give it an alert type as well. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to say if, sorry, not errors, let's call this messages. That's what we want to call it. If messages, and, so we're actually doing two condition checks, count messages is greater than 0. Then we're going to echo. No, I want to use double quotes. We're going to echo a div. It's going to have a class, and we're going to use single quotes inside the class. Alert, alert dash, and then this is going to be our alert type. Then I'm going to echo the closing div tag. And then in the middle, I'm going to run a loop. So messages as message. And I'm going to echo out the message type. So we're just going to do $message here with a break tag. So kind of an interesting function. But the whole reason why we're doing that is because we can output successes or errors, but you could potentially output anything, right? You could do info, you could do warnings, you could do whatever, right? So it's multi-versatile for you by having that function. So now all we need to do is underscore. Actually, we can just do this like this. We can take for each $errors, $successes, so we can create an array as type, like so. Oh, right. See, this is so annoying because I don't want to make this tricky. We need to do this as a associated array. That's all. Which definitely runs off the page a little bit. There we go. In here, we'll call our function. So message, we're going to give it the, so we need to do this, which is kind of weird. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. So it's the alert type, and, no, sorry, this is success, not error, successes. This is success, and this is error. So that'll be our alert type, and then we'll take our message. Messages, sorry. And then in here, we just give it the messages and the alert type. And that should work. In theory. The other way around that is to literally write this content twice, one for each type. But this makes a little bit more sense. So essentially what this is an associative array. We have a key called error and we have a key called success. The key called error has a value called errors. The key called success has a value called successes. This associative array is no different than what you've worked with the server associative array or the session associative array or post or get or any other type of associative array that you've worked with. When you do a for each loop, you can actually pass the key and the value and extract them both into variables. So we're actually, this value right now, the first time this runs will be error, and the messages will be the equivalents to whatever's inside the errors array. The second time it runs, it will be success, and the messages will be whatever is in the successes array. And that carries on through. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So if I hit register, nothing's going to happen yet because we're not actually outputting any errors yet. So I'll give you this whole file just so you have it. Notification.php in the order it's in. Now we're ready to go back to insert.php and perform some validation and throw some errors. So if we go to insert.php and scroll down a little bit, there's a section here that says validate the Recaptcha. That's what we're going to do first. We're going to validate our Recaptcha and see if the information they provided us is correct for the Recaptcha. So we're going to use the actual post array first to check to see if the Recaptcha has been set. So we're going to say $_post like so. And we're going to check the Recaptcha field, which I think we called Recaptcha response. We're going to store our secret in a variable. We have to do this because when they are set as constants, you can't pass them by reference, which is weird, but you can't. Well, you can't, sorry, you can, but you can't output it in a template string. Then we're going to collect our verify response. And here's where some of that knowledge from last week comes in handy. File get contents. So we're using that once again to make an API call. And the API call we're going to make, I'm just going to copy it and paste it into the chat window if you want to go ahead and copy it. So it's going to go to the google.com Recaptcha API. It's asking for the site verify. This is a parameter string. We give it our secret and then give it the secret value that we just stored from our secret key, which is inside our config file, right? Then our response, which is just going to be that post response. So what will happen is when you load up the page, so when you load up the register page, if you inspect and you scroll down here, you'll see that there's this really big input here. I know you can't really see it because it's kind of small, but there's a really big input here with a value, and it's a great big key. That key is what's getting used in order to validate on the next page. So that key is going to be shared under this post. Validate the Recaptcha code. Oh, this code here? Yeah, I will. We're not done writing it yet. We need to finish writing it. I mean, we've got a lot of it, but we don't have quite all of it. Yeah. So then we're going to get response data back, which will be in JSON. So we're going to use that method we learned last week, Json Decode, to decode it. We need to decode it because it's going to have information that we want to know. We're going to check that and say if $response data, which will be an object, so we have to just check for success on it. Then we're going to set, we don't need verified at all. We're going to set a error. So we'll do errors as a square because that's what it is, right? So we're going to push a new error onto it. Google Recaptcha failed. And we'll hit the space there. The reason why we're doing that is because we're going to add the error code onto it as well. So it takes a dot. And then we need to put this inside a set of parentheses because we need to return its value. Whoops, no. Response data. And grab the error code itself. This was such an annoyance to figure out. Because PHP does things very bizarre with objects. And how objects are actually interpreted. And then once we have that, we're ready to call the error handler. And we don't need to return the error handler, which is nice, because it will automatically exit our script, right? So we don't need to do extra work. So this is kind of a tricky one to view. So to test it, I'm going to refresh my page here. I'm going to click register. I hit a blank page. That's actually a good sign because that means the Google Recaptcha passed. If I hit refresh though and hit continue, I'm going to get the Google Recaptcha failed timeout or duplicate, which is what I want. That means it's working. I wonder why this is gray. It doesn't have my background in it. It says div alert error. Oh, because it's not error. I'm so sorry. Under notification, change that from error, the key here, to danger. So it's not error, it's danger. So if I hit refresh, our error goes away. But if I try register again and refresh again, it should be pink. So make sure it's danger for your error thing under line 28. What was your fatal error message, Mitty? Yeah. That just means that we haven't caught the error. But you should have an actual error message. So if you're getting undefined call to function message, why do you... Oh, I see why. Yeah, I can. If you look at that message, can you decipher why you're getting that error message, Mitty? Call to undefined function underscore message. That's not what we wrote, though. There's a space here. You're missing that space. Yep, no problem. So Mitty, it's function, space, then underscore message, because you're defining a function, right? Should response in connect PHP be defined, or does that come later? Response? I'm not sure what you mean by that. What response? Oh, where the heck did that come from? Yeah, that is not supposed to be there. You know why that's there? Because last week when we did the API, and I didn't notice that. Just take the function call around it. Change it to this line here, Jesse. Actually, everybody. Go to your _connect.php and change that line 21 to be that instead. Sorry. I copy and pasted the DB Connect from the API because I didn't feel like rewriting it out. I never remember this code. That's why I don't believe in doing memory-based tests. I hate doing memory-based practical tests. Because I would never remember all of this to type it out. I remember we did that in Rich's class. We did a memory-based test, and it was pretty brutal. Yeah, I can. I'm going to share that as a paste bin, though, Dimitri. Just because it's a little much. Yeah, I will. I'm just helping another student. There you go. You only need to replace the one line here, Mitty. Just that. All right, we ready? Is anybody still typing things out? What's your error? Did you replace it with this line, though? Or did you just remove the line that was there? Okay, so you need to replace it. There's a bracket at the end. Where's the bracket at the end? I don't see any brackets. You talking about this bracket? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, cool. There is a really handy, I don't have it installed, but there's a handy extension that you can add to VS Code that when you click on a bracket, it will highlight the opposing bracket. So that way you can guarantee that all of your brackets are in place. I recommend that when you're first learning to program, actually even just generally anyways, I would recommend installing that. It will help you guys with making sure that your parentheses are coordinated and that you have the opposite parenthesis and the opposite curly brace, square bracket, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's go back to insert.php and we'll finish this stuff off. So we're going to come down here where it says collect our fields. So this is going to be the same thing that you guys have done from every single week, right? This is the $ first underscore name equals filter input, input post, first name, right? We did that last week. We did it the week before. So I hope you guys are okay with this. Let's just copy and paste. Sound like a plan, Dan? So grab that from the chat and paste it in. I also want to validate the necessary fields are not empty. So to do that, I'm going to build myself a required list. We did this once before. And the list is going to contain all the fields that cannot be empty, which is literally all the fields in the post, right? Every single field in the post is not allowed to be empty. So it's not first name like that. So we're going to do first name, comma, last name, comma, etc. And when we're done, it will look like this. Sorry, I'm not for redundancy tonight. I'm trying to get us through this lesson. We need to get insert.php at least created. All right. So now we just need to make sure that the fields are not empty. The easiest way to do that is to use a for each loop. Iterate over the required fields as field, like so. We're going to check to see if the field is empty, and we're going to use something called a variable. I think we used them last week as well. Does anybody remember what variables are? What's the cool thing about variables? Give me one fun fact about variables. I have no idea what these are. Yep, exactly. It's a variable of variables. Yep, absolutely. So for you, Alex, basically what they are is you can use a string as a variable name to reference the original variable. So field is actually referencing first name the first time we iterate through this for each loop. Then it's last name, and we're referencing this one. And we just keep doing that until we get through all of them. Variables are super handy, especially when we're doing stuff like this. So we're going to do a string replace here, which is just going to find the underscore of the name, change it out for this, but this we don't want to pass the variable because we want the string. So we're going to do just $ field, right? So when we use a single $ like this, we're referencing literally just the label. When we use double $, we're referencing the variable. Kind of confusing, but super cool. It's definitely your intro into meta programming, actually, because meta programming is big on that idea. The whole paradigm of meta programming. Yeah. Super cool feature. A lot of other languages don't, I don't know. I was talking about this with my other senior that actually works at LMG. He's our DevOps guy. And he comes from a background in Drupal. So he has tons and tons of PHP experience. He's actually certified in Drupal. So anyways, we were talking about PHP, and I said, did you ever use variables? And he's like, oh yeah, all the time. And I said, I'm trying to think of other languages that do that. And so he's like, I don't know if Python does, but Ruby does. Ruby definitely does it. JavaScript does it, but does it in a weird way. If you define a variable using var as the decorator, it will automatically assign it to the global context. So if that's window, it will assign it to window. If it's global, it will assign it to global. So it creates kind of like a globalized context. It's basically like an associative array, essentially. Yeah, that's the replacement string. So what it does is it looks for the underscore inside the string, replaces it with a blank space, and this is the string that you're replacing it in. So this is known as the needle, they call it, the thing you're looking for, what you want to replace it with, and the haystack or thing that you want to replace it in, right? So you can kind of think of it like this. So we're looking for the underscore in first name, and we're going to replace it with a space. That's essentially what we're doing the first time we run it. Yeah, the underscore is because it's in this name. So field represents these labels, but $$ field represents these variables, right? That's the trick of variable. Like I said, complex concept, but super cool. All right, did I copy and paste this for each loop to you yet? Yes, I did. Yeah, it's very cool. You guys should always think like that. Is there an easier way to do this thing, right? And then figure it out. That's what you want to do. All right, it's definitely not phi. Though phi is a thing, it's just not a thing in PHP. We want to validate the emails in the correct format. We're already performing validation up here, right? So we have email confirmation. Oh, we're not doing it actually. Wow, we definitely need to be doing it. Let's add the filter validate email up here. I thought I did this already. I guess I did not. So just add filter validate email to your input post, and then that will validate the email for us. All right. So down here now, email will be false. That's what this bang operator is checking, is to make sure that it's false. If it's false, we're going to add a new error. The email isn't, let's use words that actually exist, in a valid format. I mean, you can write whatever notification message you want to write. I always wondered if you had like kind of an edgy website and you were like writing notification messages and you're like, what's wrong with you? That's obviously not a valid email. Like if you wrote that, what the response would be, what the reception would be like. Like most people would say that's a bad user experience, but I kind of wonder if it was like an edgy site like the Garage Brand, for example, or what's another kind of edgy, like an edgy band or something as well. Like if you had a site like that and you were kind of condescending, if it would be a bad user experience or not. We also need to check to see whether or not the email matches the confirmation, because if it doesn't, then we're going to make them go fix it. This prevents users from accidentally entering email addresses and then immediately forgetting what they are, which happens literally all the time. Which goes back to what I talked about before. All users are either what or what. Does anybody remember? The email doesn't match the email confirmation. Stupid or evil, exactly. I like that. Stupid or evil. Yeah, I think so. Good for a rock band site. Yep, absolutely. Dumbasses are hackers. Yep. All of those are valid perceptions. One more to do. $password. $password confirmation. It's writing tedious stuff like this over and over again to why co-op students are wonderful. Because you give them the tedious things to do. I'm just joking. I want that underscore. I want to keep it nice and user-friendly. As funny as it seems, you know, that whole concept of actually taking the labels and pulling the underscore out of them so that they're human readable might seem like, why? Why waste the time doing that? Like, what's really the purpose? I mean, any normal person can generally figure out that, you know, if an underscore is there, what you're trying to say, right? That it's the first name. But what's funny, and I know this from experience, users will fill out forms, and if they get back messages that contain things like underscores in them or stuff like that, it trips them up. They're like, what first underscore name field? What are you talking about? I don't have a first underscore name field. And then they immediately go to your contact page and fill it out and say, this thing I was registering for says I need this first underscore name and I can't find this field. And they'll type that out. And I'm not even joking. This is like, you might be like, oh my God, people need more common sense. And that's true. But this is a reality. This is the reality of the world we live in. All right, we're going to add our check if there are errors. I mean, in all fairness, though, sometimes whatever language you're doing this in, it could be a second language for the person that's using it, and the underscore could actually trip them up because they're already trying to understand what the language is. And then now you've got this weird underscore, which they don't necessarily know what the context is around it. So I guess there is that, but I'm not even talking about people like that. I generally mean valid, like just people who speak English on the regular basis, and they're just, I don't know, technical. They have no technical efficacy. My mother-in-law is like that. She has no technical efficacy. I've taught the woman how to use her camera and take her pictures from her camera and put them on her computer probably about 7,000 times. I wish I was exaggerating, but I think it's literally 7,000 times. When you learned factorials, you thought the math was yelling at you? All right. If we submit this now, with all of those changes we just made, without filling out anything, we should get a whole slew of error messages. So you cannot leave the first name blank. You cannot leave the last name blank. You cannot leave email blank or the confirmation blank. You can't leave the password confirmation blank. Your email isn't in a valid format. The email doesn't match the email confirmation field. And the password doesn't match the password confirmation field. Right? Reminds me of when I was a teenager and I didn't do things and my parents just wrote a laundry list of things that I had done wrong. That's essentially what's happening here. We're getting a laundry list of things we've done wrong. All right, let's fill out our form and actually see if we can pass it, because that's the next test. College.ca, Sean.McKinnon at georgiancollege.ca. ASDF, I mean super secure password. Register. Yay, blank page. Blank page is a good thing. Uh-oh. If it's not showing the errors, then either you have an error in your notification.php, which is prohibiting it, or it is possible you have an error on the actual page itself. So when you hit register with an empty form, Jesse, you get a blank page. You get no errors and the form stays the same. Okay, if you register with a filled in form, that should work. But the other way, you should get errors. So something's wrong with your notifications. They're not coming back. Let's address all that at the end. You can't click the register button. You're probably clicking the register button. Are you filling out the form, Mitty, or are you not filling out the form? But when you click register, it doesn't do anything, right? And Steph's got errors. Wow, we're batting 1,000 here. Okay, let's make this nice and simple because I don't want to fix. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole fixing a whole bunch of errors. Let's just make this simple by creating a paste bin. Please copy the code from the paste bin and replace your insert.php with this code. And then we'll try again. Do we want to do normalization? I think we'll pass by the normalization for tonight. Yeah, if you got a blank page, you're good. If you filled out the form and you have a blank page, you're good. All right, so copying, pasting that. Jesse, did it fix your issue? We'll start with you. Fix Steph's. Okay, fix Jesse's. Yeah, you need to copy and paste too. Same with you, Dimitri. Tilla's got it. Drew is good. What's weird? Nice. PHP. Yes, that is true. It is weird. You need a diff checker, Steph. If you type in online diff check, go to the online diff checker, copy and paste this for you. Put your code in the original text, put my code in the changed text. Don't click any of the spammy crap they've got here. Just click the find difference, and you'll see where your error was and where mine are different. Like, you'll see where yours are different to mine. But there is definitely a difference. The best absolute advice I can give all brand new programmers, okay? If it doesn't work, it is 99.9% of the time your fault. Just so you know. It is only 0.1% something weird, like caching. The server has done some weird thing where it's cached your script file, stuff like that. 0.1% of the time, that's the issue. 99.9% of the time, it's a pebcac error. Have you ever heard of that term, pebcac? I'll write it out for you. There you go. Pebcac. Stands for problem exists between keyboard and chair. Pebcac errors. Yeah, it's super handy, Yulia. You're missing your session start? Yep. Yes, it will. It does a one-to-one. So spaces will cause issues, tabbing causes issues, stuff like that. Yeah, no worries. Okay, let's finish off the sanitization and then people can go. That'll be it we'll do for tonight. Next week we'll do the rest of it and finish it all off. But for tonight, let's just finish off our sanitization stuff. So actually, we first need to hash and lowercase our passwords. So to lowercase the password, we're just going to do email equals string to lower. What the heck is the function name? All right, it's all one word. See, this is the things that kind of, frankly, piss me off about PHP. So we have string replace, right? That's a string function that exists in PHP. And then we have string to lower. Do you see why this annoys me? Why is there an underscore? And then no underscore in this one. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely bad form. Like, why would you not just maintain the same convention? Change convention halfway through. Makes no sense. Anyway, string to lower, $email. All that's going to do is take our email and it's going to lowercase it. Now, this is an important thing to understand. We did this at Min 10. We did string to lower, and we screwed over a whole bunch of members because they were trying to log in and they were using, like, you know, Boomer Classic, all capital letters to log in because they had registered their email that way, right? So their email was their username and they registered that way. If you're going to lowercase it, you kind of need to tell them in some way. No, God, no. I like JavaScript. And some people have that strong opinion for sure, and that's absolutely okay. I am not a big fan of PHP. All right, so our whole authentication thing, so far we've just been basically going through and doing these little pieces, but our whole authentication boils down to this next line. This next line is literally everything that encompasses all of our authentication. You ready for it? Password hash, and then the password itself. So password. And then the way we want to hash it. So it's password default. So while you're typing that out, let me explain what this does. When we store passwords in the database, we 100% never want to store them raw. We don't want to accidentally store a password in the database that could get hacked, pulled out of our database, and then used. That would be terrible. That would be Target, actually. Target did that. So we want to make sure we don't do that because we're not Target. How can we not do that? The way we can not do that is by using the password hash functionality built into PHP. What it will do is take our password, it will hash it, meaning it will actually convert it into a different string with different values inside the string. It will do it based on a hashing algorithm, and there's a whole bunch of them, but the one that we're going to use is password default, which this is super important because I know it's on the test, is a bcrypt algorithm. That's the default one that it's using, is the bcrypt algorithm. That's the default one. So it's going to use the bcrypt algorithm in order to default hash this. The other thing it does in the background, and this is also on the test, is it salts your password. Essentially what salting is it takes a string, randomly generated string, usually based on your timestamp, takes a randomly generated string and adds it to that password algorithm. That algorithm takes that string, your password, and then generates a new string and then stores that in the database. Hashing is one way only. Okay? That means once you've hashed that, you can't unhash it. There's no way to convert it back to a password, to a raw text password. Encryption, which is another type of cryptography, encryption allows for both of those to happen. You can encrypt it one way and decrypt it another way. Okay? Encryption isn't something that you necessarily encounter when you're working with like PHP passwords. However, when you work in JavaScript and you start working with Node, you're going to, especially with APIs, you're going to encounter a design pattern called JWT, which stands for Json Web Tokens. They are encrypted, meaning that they can be decrypted. So they go one way and then you use them to decrypt them the other way. The reason why that is because you want to be able to take that information, that JWT, and pull some new information from it, like a person's username. So JWTs are super important that way. Kind of dehashulator. Yeah. So what's funny though, is there are online password checkers where you give it the password that you have, right? The hash. You give it the hash and it decodes the hash and gives you back the password. And the way it does it is it takes the hash, it takes a dictionary list of passwords and runs them against the hash. And then returns back the password that matches. So it's not 100%. Yeah, a quantum computer could probably crush a hash password. Yeah. All right, so we have our hash password. That's our security. We are secure, I should say. Now we're ready to actually start grabbing our information. So the first thing we want to do is require that connect script that we were using before. We're going to use require once because, I mean, why not? At the end of the day, it should throw an error if we can't find it. I'm just going to laugh until the quantum computer can make video gaming better. We're going to store our DBO variable. We don't need to. We could just call it the way we were before, but we'll store it. And then we're going to write our SQL. And I mean, writing SQL is super boring, and I'm not going to make you do it. So I'll just copy the SQL statement and paste it because it's the same SQL statements you have written up to this point. The only difference is we have a new field called password. That's literally our only difference. Incidentally, I don't know why I put all these things on their own lines. But if you put it on the same line, you get nice highlighting. Once we have our SQL defined, we're going to create our statement variable. We're going to access our con variable, and we're going to prepare our SQL. Whoa, got some errors. Why do I have an error? That's literally the statement. What's your reasoning? Because Sean used a fat arrow. That's why. Oh, too much JavaScript today. Been writing arrow functions all day long. So cool, we've got our prep thing. Now we're ready to do all of our bindings, right? So for the first bunch of bindings, I'm just going to give you the bindings because we've written bindings every single week. So there's your first bunch of bindings. The last binding, though, for the password we'll do together. So the cool thing is the binding for the password is pretty much the same as all of the others. Actually, it's not pretty much the same. It's the exact same. Your password will be a string when you're done. The database doesn't know any better. It doesn't know it's a password, nor does it care. It just cares that it's a string and that you have enough room to store it. So when you're storing passwords, you want to make sure the field that you're using in your database allows for up to 255 characters. That gives you more than enough room to store your password. The actual set length of a bcrypt password, I believe, is 60 characters. And that might be on the test. Oh, I don't know if I've said this before. I don't know how Jess does it. But when you're doing those tests, you can use the intranet. So if you don't know the answer, you can look it up. Because some of you have sent me things that are like, hey, I don't know the answer to this because Jess didn't put it in her slide deck. That's fine. The way I teach it, I don't know how Jess teaches it, but the way I teach it, if I might have said it, because sometimes I'll say something and then it'll be on the test, but it won't necessarily be in my notes. So I do kind of expect as students that you can use the internet to go find that information. I know some teachers are absolutely against you using the internet during tests. I am not. This is off topic, but I love my soda stream. All right, we are ready to insert our row. Yeah, I know. I've heard that before about the C# class. I've heard that about the C++ class, which was really tricky for students. I've heard that about the networking class. I've heard that about every class. And yet, the funny thing about all of it is that when you're out in the industry, if you work at LMG and you're not using the internet to look up your problems and you're asking people around you, you're not going to last. We expect you to be able to find your own answers. So that's the thing that should be taught. I'm a big believer in that. You need to be able to find your own answers at whatever solution you need to do that. Yeah. All right, so now we're doing a statement execute. And that's going to fire off all of our wonderful stuff. However, remember that wonderful little thing that we added to our connect that outputs the errors? This is where we need to do try catches because if it blows up, it just blows up. So we're going to need to wrap this in a try catch. And this is going to be an exception. And we're going to make that an error, like so. And catch that error. Yeah, I can copy and paste them again. I guess the chat window kind of loses, as people talk, it kind of loses the text that was in there. that's the thing. Like, you guys are working in how many languages right now? You work in C#, you work in Java, you work in PHP. Soon you're going to add JavaScript to that list as well, plus your MySQL database, Mongo database at some point, any Linux commands that you're supposed to know. Am I forgetting anything? Like, that's 7 right there. Yeah. Also HTML, CSS, right? All those wonderful things too that you guys don't work with as much as the web students do, right? That's a lot to remember. And again, it's pointless. Why do you need to remember it? All right, so if we get our error, we'll do our error handler here. And we need to add that error to our errors. This is kind of weird how this works, but so errors equals $error, and then we need to call get message from it. And then we'll add that to our error handlers here. Don't worry, I'll copy and paste all this code. So this is what's going to happen if we have an issue. If we have an error, this is how it will be handled, right? It is basically slang. I mean, when they talk about loose languages, it is definitely one of the most loose languages that are out there. Speaking in tongues. All right, now we're ready to deal with the success. And the success is pretty easy. We just set a new session property called successes with lots of S's. So many S's. Can't say it without stumbling over my tongue. You have been registered successfully. Now, don't forget, we still need to redirect. So we're going to redirect back to, it's not header like that. That looks like Andre. Location, login.php, perfect place to go to once you've registered, and we're going to exit. All right, so I instead of just copying this and like piece by piece, I'll do it as a paste bin. Last week, I attempted to create a paste bin with PHP code, and it like gave me a warning. Should line 108 have 2 sets of square brackets? 108. What? 117. Yep. So the reason why this is weird. This is the key that we're creating in session. This is saying it's an array, and this is pushing a value into the array. So literally what's happening is we're setting a new key on sessions, we're instantiating array immediately, and then jamming something into it. Only in the world of PHP can you do that. If you try to do that in almost any other language, it'll blow up. Say, you can't do this. What are you trying to do? The array doesn't even exist yet. Oh yeah, I need to paste the paste bin. All right, so if I hit refresh over here, continue. Google Captcha failed. Notice my form is still all nicely filled out. ASDF, ASDF, register. You have been registered successfully. High five me. If I go back to register though, there's an interesting thing that I don't know if you guys noticed when we were setting up the database that I totally forgot to explain. I'm doing Georgian college.ca, Sean.mckinnon, Georgian college.ca, ASDF, ASDF. Register. And integrity constraint violation, 1062 duplicate entry for this thing. So the reason why we're getting that is because in the table that we created for our database, so this table here, you will notice that we've added something called a unique key. What it essentially does is restrict you from being able to add more than one value in that field that is identical. So we don't want emails of people, we don't want people registering the same email over and over and over again, because that doesn't make sense, right? We want them to register once and then use that email, right? That's the goal. So we have made it so that they can't do that because we put a restriction of unique key on the email field. So they can only create one of the email fields. You know what? I totally forgot to resume recording. Good thing I record in 2 places, because that type of stuff happens. I record on WebEx and I record on there. Please tell me I'm recording on WebEx. Yes, I am. Yeah, no kidding. I've had it happen to me before so many times, forgot to record. And the good thing is it usually happened when we were teaching in class, which we weren't required to do a recording for. So if it happened, and it was like, okay, that sucks. I've had it one time when I've done a hybrid class and I had to re-record the lesson, and that sucked. But yeah. All right, so this should be working. This is where we're going to stop for the night. We've kind of got to a good point. Next week, now that we have this ability to register a user, we're going to take a look at the login page and actually make this work. That's going to point to our profile, which will be an authenticated page, and we'll go through that whole process of actually authenticating ourselves. After that, we will create just a random resource. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but we'll create a random resource and we'll connect it to the user and make the user basically the owner of that resource, right? Maybe we'll do books or something like that. And then you can connect that up. I was looking at the Blackboard. I sound like a senior citizen. I was looking at the Blackboard. I went to the Costco the other day. I was looking at Blackboard under your course project. And it says that your course phase opens up on April 6th, which is like next week. Do you want me to open that earlier? Because I'm all for it. Okay. Let's open it earlier. Goodbye, display after. There you go. It's open, ready to go. Yeah. I don't see why not. So it's weird. So your labs are kind of broken up strange for this time. So the lab that's due not next week, but later this time, on April 9th, it says create a new GitHub repository, pull Jess's code down, import the users table into your database. Well, you already have the users table. Create a new branch called validation. In this branch, add client-side and server-side validation to both the sign-up and registration form. You will need to edit login.php, validate.php, and register.php, and save registration.php. Okay, you know what? Use my code, because I didn't do this validate.php, register.php, save registration.php. I didn't do it that way, right? We did it slightly different. You're going to integrate Google Recaptcha. Create a pull request of your branch. So it doesn't even say that you need to be able to create it. I don't know. What's in her code? Let's see here. Register. Easy enough. Common header. Save registration. Is it basically the same? DB prepare. Oh, okay, so Jess doesn't do first name or last name. She's only doing username and password. She's not using email, which I mean is totally easy enough. This is pretty simple. Oh, she's not even hashing the password. Okay, I see why. So I think the reason why Jess is doing this is not about passwords and logins. This is about your Google Recaptcha. So if you look, one of your constraints is to add Google Recaptcha. Yeah, Google Recaptcha. So that's all it is. So here's what I want you to do. Take Google Recaptcha and implement it on your forms inside your projects. Okay, if you don't want to do it in your project for whatever reason, then I don't know, pull Jess's code down and implement Google Recaptcha and let me know where you implemented it. I don't care whether the login stuff works. I don't care if you can register, because that's on your next one. On the next lab 5, it's literally create registration. Yeah, you can add it to your phase 2. Yeah, just Recaptcha. Just do Recaptcha. I'm even going to write that somewhere. Where can I write that? Can I edit this and create a description? Yes, I can. They're bold with cap locks. Only require Recaptcha to work. There. For phase 2, she wants us to have working file upload. If we don't cover that, yeah, exactly. If we don't cover it, I don't want it there. Yeah. Are we adding this to submissions or registration? Huh? What are submissions and what are registration? I don't know what those things are. Right now, you don't have user registration officially. Yeah, so no, but you have forms, right? Every one of you has a form. So in theory, every form you have should have Recaptcha on it. Whether it's a login form, whether it's a processing form, doesn't matter what it is, it should have Recaptcha on it. So it's not like selectively put Recaptcha, it's like literally everything you have that's a form, you put Recaptcha on. Yeah, that's what I would do. Just take the way I did it and implement it into yours. Yes, Driv, you can do that. That is entirely a-okay. Yeah, no worries. And I promise I'll get phase 1 marked, so you guys at least know what the heck's going on with phase 1. I'll do that Friday. And if I have any issues, I'll send you an email. That's it. You guys are welcome to go. If you have issues, we can definitely look at your code. Yes, Mitty, and yes, Scott. Mitty, why don't you show me your... Actually, hold on one second. Just because Scott's is probably likely going to be quick. What is your DB object issue? Scott, yes, Yulia, you're free to go.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's call to a member function prepare. Like it's giving me a PHP error on line 104. So I can share my screen as well if you like.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. It's an odd error because it's not actually in the connect that the problem is. So what it is it's usually a SQL error that causes it when you go to do the prepare. So let's see here. So SQL, so first name, last name, email, password, those are all correct. First name, last name, email, password is all correct. Prepare SQL. It's always things like first name and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is the
It
problem.
should be because I wrote my own code, but then I just pasted it over you with yours. So it should be all up to snuff.
Let's see your error message in the browser.
Sure. There it is.
Call to a member function.
Actually, enough, when I was programming earlier, I had a similar issue.
This makes sense. So call to a member function on a string, saying basically what it's saying is the DBO function that you're pulling back is returning a string.
Okay.
So let's go see your connect, because whatever's happening there, it's returning a string and not the DBO object. Oh, right. Actually, that kind of makes sense. So chances are we're hitting an error. See that return issue connecting error get message? That's down there at the bottom. That's being returned as the string. So that's what's getting stored inside the DBO. Why don't you var dump the error there, and we'll see what it is. Because I bet you there's an error coming out of it. You'll need to do it above the return statement, or it won't execute.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I think I have that database connected correctly, but I guess we'll
Don't
find
forget your
out.
apostrophe, line 21.
Yeah.
Or apostrophe, semicolon.
That's right. The one thing PHP is serious about.
JavaScript isn't.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
Yes.
reset. Is that like Amy Lee Evanescence? Amy Lee?
Yeah. It's one of the random fake users I'm using for my project.
Okay. Okay, so you have a connection refused error. So it's likely something, either your SQL database is down or
I messed up the spelling and something, but okay. At
credentials.
least that's something I can fix.
Yeah, it's weird that you didn't get that error prior to that. I think it's because of where we're handling it. We're supposed to be returning that statement, but then we're redirecting the error message, so it's not getting caught properly.
Right.
Which is
Okay.
it's kind of annoying. There is a way around that. If you go back to your code. So you see where you can do nested try catches underneath insert, wherever it is.
And
So go to your insert.php. Yeah. In that try catch there, sorry, not the try catch. See the statement where you have 104 there, line 104? Yep. Wrap that in a try catch that catches the PDO exception. And click on that line, press Alt and up, and it will go up.
Oh, sweet.
There you go.
It means learn more of these keyboard shortcuts.
They're handy.
Yeah, just phase out the mouse altogether.
Yeah, actually, come to think of it, I don't use my mouse all that often. I never actually
there you go,
paid
right?
attention to that.
Yeah.
So it's PDO exception, all one word. Yeah, there you go. And then cast that to $error or whatever. And then if you want to, you can just use the error handler and like throw it as an error handler in the error handler if you wanted to.
Okay. So let's see that. We add it to the array.
Mm-hmm. Right, Jesse. Thank you for clarifying that.
All right. So that should throw it then.
Yeah, if you go back, you should see that error properly now. No problem, Steph. Cheers. Huh.
Interesting.
That is interesting because we wrapped it and we are definitely catching the PDO exception. Maybe get rid of the var dump. The var dump might be causing it to goof up,
Okay.
but
Sounds good.
oh boy, we lost everything.
Yeah. Let's see, what was I using in here? Let's use JDO now.
There's an extension for Chrome that actually does form fill outs for you when you're doing testing.
Yeah. That sounds good.
I have no idea why that's happening. It should be 100% caught.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally have a try catch in the connect, and we literally have a try catch in the thing. It really makes no sense that it's not catching it.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'd have to investigate that further to figure it out. I'm not sure why it's not catching it.
So weird. All right. Well, yeah, thank you. I'll look into the database and see what I've messed up there.
Yeah, no problem, Scott.
All right, thanks.
Hi, Prof. I have the same other problem with the session start. So after I inserted the data in a register, I got a exception in a login PHP.
In the login page?
Yep. Can I show my screen?
Yeah, of course.
So after I created the success registration, I go to these exceptions.
Yeah, so the reason why is you see how it says cannot start session when headers are already sent. What that basically means is that it's attempting to start the session, but we've already outputted something on the page. So the error looks like it's occurring on line 16 of notification. It's likely in notification. So go to notification.
Yeah.
So if session status equals PHP underscore session none, then do session start. That's correct. Are you running session start somewhere else accidentally? Scroll down a little bit. Okay.
Oh, maybe this. Oh, I got. Maybe this problem.
No, that's just a comment. You now need to erase that. That's actually not throwing an error for you.
Oh.
No, your session start is correct. You have a lot of bizarre errors happening that don't really make any sense.
Yeah, so and after I click the register, I got back the successful information. So for example, I fill again. Oh,
Session start. I wonder if I'm getting that error too, actually, and I just didn't notice it because it's.
looks like the code is good. So it's the same your code. I write parallel with you.
It's guaranteed to be just something silly. Let's see here, lesson 10. Register. What happens if you go to the login page directly? Like click that login button. Sorry, not the login button at the bottom. Refresh your screen. I just want to see if the session start error is still there when you refresh.
I got the same.
Line 5. Can you go to line 5 on notification.php?
Yeah, line 5, the session start.
So that makes 0 sense. So session status equals PHP session none, which means it's not running. Then we get session start. Then we go through. So that makes no sense whatsoever.
This is the reason why I print out the session status.
Yeah, what is the session status?
1, which is a good because it's a 1, and the session PHP session noun is 1, so is equals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you push your code to GitHub and then I can look at it?
Of course, I got use always the GitHub, so I share with you repository class. Okay. I invited you.
Okay. Go to my.
Oh, and pushing my last modification. Okay. Oh, and oh, yeah, it's and push. Okay. Everything's committed.
Okay, I've accepted. You pushed it, you said? All right, yeah, you got it here. Just copy it. Oh, shit. Open that. Get bash here. All right, get clone. Turn it. All right, I'll clone that down. I just want to see if I get the same error as you get, because if I get the same errors, then that says that it's your code. But if I'm not getting the same errors and it works for me, then it's not your code and it's something else.
Maybe the PHP problem. Just a moment. I check the PHP version.
So you need to be 7 or higher, right? Okay, register, all that's good.
PHP info. I use the PHP 7.4.14 version.
Yep, that's fine. I'm getting the same error. All right, call that member function prepare on string on line 117. So actually, I'm not getting that error. I'm getting a error in the actual. Oh, probably because my connect is different than yours. That's why. Hold on. Let me fix my connect.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because I use Docker for the MySQL and the PHP as well.
Right. All right. The hell. That should be correct. Let's see here. MySQL. Oh, right, because you have a different. You have everything different.
Yep.
I just grab my connection script so that I know that I'm using the same one. There we go. Right. All right. ASDF, register. Integrity constraint. Nope. So I'm not getting the session issue that you're getting.
Oh, okay. Maybe my side. Maybe I restart everything and maybe it's the Windows. Usually I use the Linux and the Mac. Just only this cruise I use the Windows and the .NET.
Right. It is weird though. Sessions can be affected by your applications as well, like the browser you use or whatever. It can be affected, but it's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be affected at all. What I'm guessing is happening is maybe you're not exiting somewhere properly, and because you're not exiting, it might be parsing code underneath it. So just make sure that you're exiting after you do your headers redirects. Actually, I could have checked that.
Oh, it duplicates. Sorry.
As long as you redirect afterwards.
The same.
Yeah, you are. Am I looking at the wrong code base? No, I'm looking at the correct code base. Yeah, you're redirecting after. Is your error message is redirecting after? Yep. Let's see.
Okay. Okay, and I restarted the Docker. Maybe. No, the same.
Wonder if Docker causes issues.
Yeah, maybe it's a Docker. I was checking the Linux normal Linux server. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right, Mitty, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'll show my console. All right, so here's registration form, right? So,
Yep.
So the register button is clickable. If only the login button is clickable.
So if you click login, or sorry, if you click register, it just locks up. It looks like it's not even going anywhere. It looks like it just literally locks up.
Probably.
Can you hit F12? Like open up your dev tools.
That's all. Okay.
Oh, hit function F12.
Oh, okay. Function. Yeah, I should be up to F12 because it just mutes my microphone.
Sorry, where's your dev tools? Did you open them up? Right click on the screen and click inspect.
Inspect.
Yeah. Click on the double arrows up in the top right there and choose network.
Okay.
Refresh your screen, fill out the form, and hit register.
All right. So where's the refresh?
So refresh your screen with the little refresh button up in the top left.
Okay.
Yeah. Fill out the form and then click register.
All right. Let's see.
And then click register.
Yeah, I was still not able to click it.
It's not actually working at all. You've done something to the register button, which has actually caused it to no longer be a part of the page. Can you go to your code for a minute?
Okay, so unregistered.
I need to go to register.php.
Yeah.
And I bet you had a bit of money. It's further down. Scroll all the way down. Stop. Yeah. So can you collapse your sidebar? Do you know how? Just click those page icon up in the top left. Just click that page icon and then they'll collapse.
Right.
There we go. Let's see here. Yeah, you see, the issue is you have a quote character after Recaptcha response after the chevron. You need to put it on the other side. So what's happening is that input is not actually being closed, which is causing the register button to not work properly.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it has to be closed like this, right?
Yeah, and you need to get rid of the one that's inside the quote.
This one, right?
Yeah. There you go. Save that, and that should fix it. And then refresh your page.
Refresh. There we go.
Yeah. Now fill it out and submit it.
All right. So let's see. Sorry. it should work now. Oops. Oh,
There we go. So those are different errors. Those are in your code base as well. You can just grab my code from that paste bin though. And then you'll have working code. Where is that paste bin?
oh, is it this page?
Yes, that looks right.
So I'll just,
Sure, it's the correct one. Everything is in there. Yes, everything's in there.
okay, so to erase everything, then paste it.
Did it work or no?
All right. Let's try it first. Paste everything.
Yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's missing a whole bunch of stuff. You need this paste bin. Hold on. I'll share it in the chat channel. You need that paste bin.
So let me just look at that one. All right.
Because that one that you were using is missing like the password hashing and all that type of stuff, so it wouldn't work.
Save back to my register. This one, right? So when you refresh the page, oh, so
Yeah. So now fill out the form again.
okay, just the password. And oh, it's wrong. Maybe no. Okay. First login.
Register. Right? Okay, so likely your connection script has a problem in it. So if you go to your connect, are those your details? Is that the database name that you're connecting to, and is that your username and password?
Yes.
That's all correct?
Let me just make sure. So
Nope, it's definitely not correct. So you don't have a database under your schemas. It's called database.
okay.
If I'm correct, Mitty, I think you had to do yours through phpMyAdmin, not through Workbench. Because I think Yulia helped you, and you had to do it through phpMyAdmin.
I'll just log into
So you had an issue where you had multiple working. Yeah, so you don't have a database called database in there. You have a database called contacts. So where did you add the user table? Did you add it under contacts? Do you remember where you put it? Nope. Comp 1006. So what you can do then is, yeah, you probably put it in there and you put it under one of those databases.
Okay, so where is it?
No, it's not in there. Is it in the Comp 1006 one?
Yeah. So I guess I have to, and then create the table.
You need to choose which database you're going to use. I just don't know if it's going to work in there because that looks very different than the database that you have inside your phpMyAdmin.
Okay. I'll just use the Hot 106.
You don't need to save the script. You can just run it with a little lightning bolt.
Okay, so created the table here.
Yep. So go try and see if you can actually run your code or not.
Okay. I refresh this page, then.
Okay, so they are connected. Never mind. Oh, right, because you're getting the information the performance schemas. Okay, so yeah, so it's the same database. Can you go to your actual code? Like to your, not your code, sorry. Brain's not working. I mean your browser where the registry website is that we've been using.
Okay, register.
I think it's the other purple one there. Yeah. Just try clicking refresh. If everything's working, it should just work.
Here we go.
No. Try typing in your password.
Let's see.
You don't actually need to type in like a long password. You can just do ASDF kind of thing because it's all local. It's not like anybody's going to be able to hack that password.
Here's the register.
Okay, in your code, go to the connect.php file. Down there, we're just above line 21. Create a new line, and we're going to var dump the error. So I don't know what's causing it. So var underscore dump. And it's a function call, so you need parentheses. And $error inside the parentheses as an argument. And then close it with the semicolon. And save that, and then go back and click refresh. And just do ASDF or whatever. All right. Unknown database. Go back to connect.php.
So probably database name to.
Yeah, comp 1006. I don't know how I missed that.
No worries. So now I'm just going to refresh the page.
Yeah.
Let's do the van.
At least we know Recaptcha is working.
Here we go.
Yay! There you go.
So all I gotta do is just thing.
No, you can't log in yet. It doesn't work yet.
Oh,
We're gonna do that next week.
cool. Well, good thing is it works.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, man.
So I'll see you next.
Yep, sounds good. Are you still waiting on me, Scott? Are you?
Yeah. I know it's getting late, so I don't want to keep you, but I had one question on the whole MVC thing with PHP.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I've been trying to I've been hitting you up on Slack trying to figure it out. I think I might be getting close to it, but
Okay.
I guess what a good place to start would just be kind of sorting what we have out just into separate PHP pages, like a model page, controller page, a view page, and then slowly try to turn them into functions and objects from there.
Yeah, that can be a good approach.
Yeah, 'cause
It's really just separating your like your concerns, right? So if it's data related, it goes in the model. If it's view related, it goes in the view. And if it's something that needs to be facilitated between the view and the model, like business logic, then it goes in your controller.
Okay, yeah. Because I think at this point, just trying to get the functions, the data they need has been an issue. Well, when I was reading through it, it said try not to like shove post into like a session cookie or something like that. But I like right now I can't get any of my models to see post data, and it must be because I'm not having something like load properly or inherit properly.
Yeah, so the way post works is when you go to your controller, right? So your request should be hitting the controller. Does that happen? Like, can you access post data in the controller itself?
Yes, I believe so, because the way I have it is that it goes through the controller. So the controller is loading up the view page, because my views aren't objects yet. And then it's calling a function from the model, but the controller was built with the model. So I was hoping that would be enough to kind of include it within the scope.
Oh, no, I don't think it is because I think, well, no, that doesn't make sense. Session variables should be available. Sorry, post variables should literally be available from any scope, regardless.
Right, that's what I was thinking, yeah. Because like this is where the like all the trouble is here, right? So I have my controller,
Right.
it's loading this plate model. So so it has a plate model object in there. And I
Yeah.
was hoping like this would then, okay, great. When I come off of, I think it's index add here, I've tried to set it up that, it goes through, but I guess with this, I'm no longer going through controller, am I? I'm building a new controller on the view page. Maybe that.
Yeah, you're adding a new controller. Right.
So I need to go back where it's coming through here.
You might have to pass it. As weird as that sounds. No, because post is always available. Never, doesn't matter where you are, it's always available.
Yeah.
Even if it's
Okay.
empty, it's available.
Yeah, and I think that's what the problem is. Like when I dump it here, it exists. But then if I go to controller add plate, and here's this function, this is what it wraps it around, right? And the controller is the add plate function, but it maps onto this create function in the model. None of these are available. It's all null.
You see what the problem is, right?
Like I'm thinking it's because it's a two-step. It should be a
No,
one-step.
it's because of what you're doing on lines 104 all the way to 111. So input post and then the name of the key, not the post object.
Oh, and the name of the key. Okay, so is this making like a new post?
So what you're doing there essentially is you're asking for that and then you're shoving a variable in there. So whatever value is in food name would be the key that it's attempting to look for in the post object.
Right. But it's already there, so I'm just overriding it then. Is that
No, so say the value of post food name was Bob.
okay?
You're essentially saying, hey, look at my post object for the key Bob and return that value and store it in food name.
Okay.
Because you're returning the value. When you reference $post with food name in it, you're returning that value. And the way filter input works is it looks at the post object and looks for the key. The second argument in that function is the key.
Right.
But you're
So-
not
so this-
passing the key, you're passing whatever value is currently stored in post food name.
Oh, I see. Okay. Wait, so how would the key look in this, right? Because food name.
Just food name. Just literally food name. That's it. You wouldn't pass post food name, you just pass food name.
So
as a
just
string.
just this.
Yep, literally just that. Well, no, you need the quotes around it because it's a string. But
That's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. And then
Oh,
hypothetically,
you got a straight square bracket. Get rid of that
I do.
straight.
There it is. Yeah. All right. So hypothetically, this should work. Then this should just be able to kind of commit it if I have everything else wired up correctly. But is what I've done here, is this like a good, like the beginnings of like a good MVC?
Okay, so what is index add? Where am I looking inside your Okay, so there. So you have a form that kind of. So here's basically what you would want. You would want that form for that add to be under your views. That's where you would want that form.
Right. I had it set up like that before, and I couldn't get it working, but it could have been because of this. So I'll go back and try that out. And because that's the idea, right? So you go through the controller, it calls up a form, it calls up a model, and then you do the work inside of the controller.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Yeah. No, that's very helpful. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah. All right. Awesome, man. Hopefully I can get this thing figured out. Yes. Now because this is like the desired way to program PHP. Something not just scripting it out, right? Like more of a
like to program object-oriented programming, yeah, you definitely want to go down that route. It's just really, you kind of have to ask the question, Scott, whether or not PHP is the programming language you think you want to program in. And if it's not, then you kind of have to say, do I want to waste my time learning this? Right? Like,
Yeah.
is it crucial for me to learn this?
Yeah. I've been asking myself that a lot, yeah, because I'm not sure if PHP is the programming language for me, but at least there's options out there, right?
There is, like, I mean, you're talking about one of the most oversaturated industries that could
Okay.
possibly exist, right? PHP, there's no shortage of PHP programmers. But that's also the reason why they are not the most highly paid, unless they've specialized. So if they specialize, like learn Drupal, for example, and they know Drupal backwards and forwards, or they know Magento backwards and forwards, those frameworks, then they can find work all day long.
Right. Okay.
WordPress
Good to know.
developers, not so much.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I've really enjoyed C#, and because I don't have a co-op lined up, I like my personal project, depending on what they do, I really want to get into ASP.NET. I think we have a class coming up in it.
You do with Rich Freeman, probably.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And I really like C#, so I'm interested in seeing, okay, how can we do C# on the web? Yeah, and maybe that one will just jive better, because yeah, PHP has been, it's been rough.
Yeah, PHP it's because part of the problem, the reason why you probably like C# is because it's intentional, right? So
Yeah.
it's like this variable is a string, this variable is a number, and I can rely on that throughout my code. Whereas
Right.
PHP is like, you can tell me it's a string, but we're not going to guarantee that by the end of this application.
Yeah. Yeah. No, very
And that
true.
can throw people off a lot. It can really throw you off.
Okay.
Incidentally, C# programmers, there's tons of work out there for you. Very well paying work because it's a
Good to know.
small pool of developers.
Okay. Yeah, because I like what Microsoft's been doing. I like how, I mean, there's Xamarin and everything. There's all these different ways to use it. So I'm interested in that. Because I
One
kind of
big one that
like
I've
that.
seen recently that's kind of like a Xamarin competitor is oh shoot, my brain completely stopped working. Ionic. Ionic.
Ionic, okay.
It's like a front end kit that automatically utilizes whatever the client's defaults UX is. So whatever UI elements it has, it automatically implements them. It can be cross-platform deployed, which means you can not only deploy it for the web, but you can also deploy it for iOS or Android or whatever other device you want. Its backend core is usually used with it's usually used with like React or Vue or one of those JavaScript front ends. Because even if you learn C# and ASP.NET, a lot of the front ends are still these JavaScript front ends, right?
Right.
Like a good chunk of them. But the whole back ends of these things tend to be .NET and Core. Like .NET Core with C# tends to be the big one. And there's about 4 places in Barrie that are always looking for C# developers. And they pay about $60,000 to start for a junior developer, but there's no reason you couldn't be well over 100 within a couple of years.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's nice to hear. I pay off some student loans and all that. That would be, yeah. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I'll look around for that. I know there was a C# co-op posted up in Midland I tried to go after, and I don't know if I was successful in that now because it just closed a few days ago. But yeah, I'd be very interested in that.
There's one in Barrie for sure. There's a couple in Barrie. I don't know if you're near Barrie at all, but yeah.
No, I'm in Barrie. Yeah, I'm right in Barrie.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the businesses. I'll look them up because I did an interview process with them and I got accepted, but I didn't want to do C#, so I declined. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look them up and I'll send you their information.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Oh, I guess one last question then. When it comes to that kind of thing, like, as a programmer, do you kind of like get super into, say, 1 or 2 or 3 languages and kind of make that your professional focus, or how does that usually kind of work out, or is it just kind of wherever the road takes you?
I would specify, so I would definitely, sorry, not specify, specialize. I would specialize in a specific language. I would look at the market and see what the best language for you is, what pays the most, or even just what you enjoy programming in, right? Like C# pays more than JavaScript, but I enjoy programming in JavaScript more than C#. So that's why I would prefer that. But yeah, so you want to figure out what language you enjoy doing, specialize in that language, but be versatile. Meaning that if a job comes up and it's a well-paying job and they're like, we program in Rust, and you're like, I don't know Rust, but I could learn Rust.
Yeah, learn
Then
Rust.
you can be versatile for it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem, Scott.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, have a good week. I'll see you next week then.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Okay, yep, bye.